call this town council meeting for June 22nd to order. If everybody will please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all very much. I appreciate that. Just wanted to start out by saying thank you to my co-chair, Steve Jones, for running the last few meetings. I appreciate him more than anyone will know. I know he did a splendid job, and I appreciate having such a good, strong leader to help me out here. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
And we have no proclamations or presentations tonight. So we're going to get right into this. Public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council with a 2-minute limit. If you are on a device, you can raise your hand. I will call on you. When I call on you, please state your name and address for the record. If you are on a phone, it is *9 to raise your hand, and the same will apply. Please state your name and address for the record. I'm sorry, just let me get 1 second so I can get my notes page up. And we're gonna go ahead. All right, the first person I have is Rebecca Risley.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Rebecca Risley, 103 Mountain Spring Road. Just checking that you can hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So as we're preparing to go back to in-person meetings, I wanted to speak tonight in support of continuing Zoom access for all town meetings and boards and committees, commissions, task force, if possible. While the pandemic really has caused so much havoc in everyone's lives in so many areas, the one silver lining that came out of it is that the Zoom format has really enabled many community members to participate in our local government, to listen, to learn, and to be part of the process. It's allowed parents, senior citizens, people with disabilities, residents who wouldn't be able to attend in person for a variety of reasons, to be included in the important work of our town government. So people have been attending consistently and in record numbers, and it really seems evident that it's a service our town utilizes and appreciates. Even tonight, there's about roughly 25 participants outside of council members. The number keeps going up and down a little bit as I look at it, but about 25. And that's a much higher number than would ever be likely to attend on a regular basis in person. So thank you very much. I just wanted to share my thoughts on that and hope that it's something we can implement for our town.
Thank you. Next, I have Colleen Udachek.
Hey, Tammy, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Hey, Tammy. So Colleen Udachek, 12 Blueberry Hill, Tolland. Just to follow up what the last resident said. I see on you have 8 on the agenda tonight, 8.3, talking about possibly going back to in-person meetings. I definitely think having the option of the Zoom meetings along with the in-person meetings, or however, which way you can come up with, would really greatly benefit our town. There's a lot of people that, like the last president said, parents, senior citizens, residents with disabilities. It's an easier way for them to be able to stay tuned what's going on in their local government. So I look forward to hearing your conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Kristen Morgan.
Thank you, Tammy. Kristen Morgan, 167 Dockerel Road. I just wanted to say that I'm grateful to have the opportunity tonight to express my support for continuing to keep these meetings available to the public on Zoom. I'm really grateful because I have 2 young kids at home right now, and it would be a real hardship for me to get to meetings, as I'm sure anyone with kids can understand. Like other adaptations to COVID, I think this one's proven to be a real value because it allows citizens of Tolland not just to view the proceedings of meetings as we could before, but to actually participate with our voices. I think a lot of us have discovered in these types of meetings a way to really engage in the right to participate in public governance. That's been hard for us before due to accessibility issues like disabilities, compromised immune systems, difficulty driving at night, or a lack of reliable transportation, or even those who are primary caregivers for family members. And the other benefit is that I can use my computer to do closed caption because I have a hard time hearing in person. So this is also really nice. I really get to hear what everybody's saying. So I really appreciate these meetings being on Zoom, and I am absolutely in favor of keeping them. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Howard-Bender.
Hi, everybody. Kate Howard-Bender, 103 Goose Lane. I don't anticipate hearing from anybody else other than Tammy or maybe Mr. Luba or some of the other folks. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm here because I wanted to just read my email. It's very short, so I should be within the time limits. I wrote to the Town Council and the Board of Ed, and I said, I understand that you will be discussing whether or not to continue virtual participation at our town meetings at the Town Council meeting tonight. I believe it is absolutely worth the investment to ensure that all the Tolland residents have full access to the decisions and discussions that you all have. During the pandemic, you have seen higher attendance rates at town meetings than in previous years, and I cannot conceive of any possible reason to discontinue this public access. I'm sure that each one of you would agree with me that transparency in government is essential, and it would show that you believe in transparency if you ensure Zoom or other remote participation, two-way participation. So I'm just asking you, and I'm hoping that you'll address this tonight in your discussions, whether or not you want to keep the residents of Tolland informed and engaged in your proceedings, or if you just want to shut us out. I hope that the answer is not shutting us out. I thank you for all your work, and I hope you all stay well.
Thank you. Mr. Rubino.
Yeah, good evening. Bob Rubino, 296 Weigold Road. Hey, I'm just going to throw in on the item of 8.3, the previous four speakers, I think they've all hit the right note on that. Continuing Zoom is great for access. You know, had it not been raining tonight, I would have been calling in from the Walnut property. So if we did not have Zoom, I would miss the meeting. So let's continue the Zoom meetings. But I want to direct your attention, or at least my comments at this point, to item 8.1 on your agenda. You know, in support of, this property represents a unique complement to Tolland's open space properties, as it offers an equal portion a number of the intangible underpinnings that constitute Tolland's quality of life. Protection of farmland represented by the 5-acre hayfield, the historic preservation of the 2 mill sites on the Donkeyville property, enhancement of the greenway connectivity between open space parcels of Joshua's Trust, Tobias, and property off of Noah Lane, the current Weigold Conservation Area, the Scungamug River and the surrounding parcels, including Coventry Fish and Game and Joshua's Trust parcels off of Goose Lane. That the Weigold Living Trust is willing to gift this parcel to the town of Tolland speaks volumes to the Tolland Conservation Commission as a vibrant and trustworthy organization dedicated to their charge of conserving open space, demonstrated these past 22 years, as well as their reputation of honoring the legacies of the family names of our generous benefactors. Couple this with the respectful care of the property at little to no cost to the taxpayer by community volunteers, secures not only Tolland's quality of life long into the future, it also ensures follow-on land donations to the town. As with our other open space properties in town, should the council approve entering into the sales agreement, I'm confident that the Conservation Commission's open space management plan will strike appropriate balance between conservation of the unique aspects of this parcel and ensuring the public safety while visiting this latest, I'll call it crown jewel of Tolland's irreplaceable portfolio of open space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you to everybody who had participation there. That gets us on to 6, which public hearing items, of which we have none. 7A, reports of boards and committee members responsible to the council. Brenda, do you have anything for us tonight?
Yes, I have both for tourism and sustainable CT.
Okay,
For
tourism
the
first.
tourism, our Facebook page is continuing to get a lot of likes and interactions. I'm getting more people outside of town to like the page or follow the page, so that's awesome. The tourism meeting that was supposed to be held tonight has been moved to next Tuesday. So I'll have, and that's their annual meeting, along with a marketing meeting that was moved till next Tuesday. So I was glad I didn't have a conflict there. For Sustainable CT, the Sustainable CT group had a meeting with a couple of the summer fellows for Sustainable CT to find out what we can work with. One of the things that they're checking on, and Mr. Rubino might be interested in hearing this, I hadn't seen a response to it yet, but they were looking to see if we can actually up the matching, even though we hadn't asked for the maximum amount of matching for our Want It property. They thought that we could go ahead and up it because we collected enough from the residents. So they were looking into that for us. I don't know if Mr. Rosen, if you had received a response yet, but I hadn't seen one. No? Okay. And then the other thing was we were going to be taking a look at getting an equity coach to work with us. We're going to work on two things. Part of the process is to ensure that we take one project that we're working on through the town and ensure that every aspect of it is taken a look at through an equity lens. And an equity lens is ensuring that no marginalized group is excluded from participating or benefiting from the program we're looking at. The other thing we're going to look at for getting an equity coach is to see if they can pair us up with someone who can do equity training that would be open to the residents of the town. And there did not seem to be a cost at all for the town for having this type of training. If we are not doing it on ourselves, we can also take a look at pairing up with another community that's working with Sustainable CT to do equity training for all the residents. So I thought that was a great opportunity and something that we would want to take advantage of. So those are the two updates I have for the committees responsible to the town council.
Thank you very much. That gets us to reports of liaisons. Brenda.
Okay.
Back to you.
So,
unless you want me to go to somebody else first.
Oh, it's fine. I'll just keep going this way. I won't miss anything. The Tolland Historic District Commission meetings, unfortunately, they were canceled. There was, we'll just call it technology issues. So the Blight meeting was also canceled. We're looking at probably July for having the next meeting. And planning and zoning, they had a meeting last Monday. They had a public hearing about allowing Camille's to have an outdoor patio, which has been approved. So they're thinking that shortly they'll be able to have some outdoor seating. So I'm really excited about that. They also had discussions on Airbnbs about small stock. What they mean is, you know, like farm animals. And I'm sorry, my computer might kick me off here so really fast. Taking a look at home occupancy regulations. Those home occupancy is for businesses, you know, home occupancy business. And then also taking a look at multifamily housing in the residential design district. I guess my computer's not going to kick me off. I got a blue screen of death for a second there.
Hit the bouncy ball.
So if I disappear, I'll try to get back on another place. But that was everything. I didn't know if anybody had any questions about planning and zoning because there was a lot there.
There was a lot there. Does anybody on council have any questions about the planning and zoning stuff? No. Okay. Is that everything, Brenda? That was a lot. So thank you very much. Actually, the multi-housing in the RDD. I know they were allowing it in certain districts before. Are they looking at expanding it into the regular residential district?
Yeah, they were taking a look at what they wanted to do for the regulations for multifamily housing, and also taking a look at density. So one of the things that they were looking at was to allow duplexes in that area, and how to get that density involved in there. Hopefully to make some housing more affordable, but more affordable and having affordable housing are two different things.
Totally different things. They have to be deed restricted otherwise.
So,
well, thank you. That's informative. Thank you. Sophia.
Yes, Sophia Johnson speaking. With regard to the Board of Education, there was, of course, they did the normal financial, reported on the financial statements, but what I would like to report is that there seems to be mixed concerns with regard to, post-COVID and mask wearing and identifying students that would require to get a waiver if they don't want to have, the families don't want to have their vaccination status noted. And I don't know if it's possible, but with the school district, that it should really push to try to get as much involvement from the community. And of course, this is my opinion, because just as a board, there was a lot of discussion that, clearly highlighted the direction that they can go in to make things so that it's safe with students that, parents that have students that may opt out and have them homeschooled, and whether or not that would be covered by the state or if it would be covered by the school district. So there's a lot of different plans that would be in place that once I would think that it would be beneficial for the community to be able to meet like a forum. I know we have public meetings, but maybe have a public forum at one of the schools so that we can get as many parents in so that they can understand exactly what the superintendent has, in the works, without having a lot of speculation that starts running off at the, within the community, and not understanding if there's going to be isolation within the school district, if there has to be identification within the school district. So there's a lot of information with how this is going to impact the new normal, or if we're going to go back to normal. So again, with just listening to that and just listening to the different questions that the board had, I can only imagine what the community has. And it did, just in social media, there were different issues that were brought up. And I think that it would be beneficial, if not to encourage parents to attend the next board meeting, that they have a public forum where they specifically talk about that and get the residents to come up and go to the mic and express their questions, and help with Dr. Willett when he's forming what are new, if we're going to be doing a new normal or going back to normal. So that was the only thing that went back and forth that I feel that should be under your attention, Madam Chair, so that we can ensure that the community knows exactly what those impacts will be and be able to offer their opinion with how they would like to see things go. Thank you. The Permanent Celebration Committee as well, they are closed for the summer. They'll be back in September, looking forward to doing our scarecrows. So, and there's still a vacancy. There was a resident that expressed interest, and I think, I encouraged her to send in a letter, so hopefully we'll get another member that will contribute all of her skills to the Permanent Celebration Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually mentioned to Mr. Rosen today about seeing if we can get the second half of the harvest celebration possibly back on PCC's radar for the fall. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that at some point.
Thank you.
Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on the 10th, the Conservation Commission had their regular meeting. They did a really fantastic, and I see Bob is still in attendance, so kudos to him and Ken Hankinson. They did a presentation on the history of the Conservation Corps and their involvement with the commission. So I don't know if that's available publicly, but it was a pretty vibrant presentation and very educational for someone who's on the council new, but very involved in the commission. So they also reported that there were 25 volunteers that helped with the Parks and Rec to reblaze and do some cleanup on Crandall's. So if you see some bright new yellow, red, and blue trail markers, that's a lot of credit to the volunteers in town that came out to help, as well as some of the staff from the rec department, including Bruce Watt and I believe one of the members of the rec advisory board. I forget their name. So that was the majority of their meeting. There was a little bit of an update on the Wannet property. There was discussions about phase 2 and trying to push up some of those aspects to sooner than I think next year. So there's ongoing discussions with that. The Water Commission met last night. There were some concerns about damage. Actually, there was a lightning strike, I believe, at the pump station, I think well 1. And I think there was some damage or some issues with the motor, but I believe they're working with CWC to rectify some of those issues. Additionally, there was discussion about the leak detection service. I think it was about $2,000 that was spent for the Torrey Road Skunk-a-Mug system. And I think there was a quote possibly somewhere in the realm of, I think, $40,000 if they wanted to expand that leak detection to all of the water systems, residents, as well as, the buildings and commercial spaces that rely on that water system to identify any potential leak issues. Otherwise, they've been doing very well financially. I believe they're up about $241,000 in cash year over year. So the budget performance has been pretty excellent, just with a little uptick in expenditures over the past month due to some of those incidences. And then on this Thursday, the 24th, there's another Conservation Commission meeting, but this is the start of their summer site walk meetings. So the second meeting of each month, the public is invited to go walk on one of the trails after a quick business meeting. So they will be meeting at Becker, which is on 327 South River Road at 6 o'clock. And that covers it for me.
The lightning strike, the damage to that, is that gonna, was that damage directly to the well motor?
I believe so. I'd have to probably defer to either the minutes or if, I know Bev is on, and she's the staff liaison that works with the Water Commission.
I'm sorry, Tammy, what was the question?
The lightning strike. Was that direct damage to the motor? Is that going to be a hit to their reserve account to repair it?
Yeah, I've referred it to Mike Wilkinson for KERMA for insurance. If that's
okay, for an insurance claim. That's good. Perfect.
As well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that information. Are you all set, Steve?
Yep. All set.
Okay. Lou?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That the Birch Grove Building Committee has had several meetings. That we had our meeting that was set for last week was canceled because there was no change orders. There's a meeting going on tonight that I was unable to attend the past 2 meetings because of being out of state for various issues. But that after review of the minutes accurately reflect that there have been several change orders that have been adopted and passed, that we are still within the comfortable parameters that the building committee has set as far as the amount of cushion that we have both on the builders as well as the owners' contingencies, that we're being very mindful of how close we are getting. I think that as far as the owner contingency, we're down to about $200,000, which, although that sounds like a lot for any other project, for a school building project, is something that considering that we faced some change orders that have come close to $50,000 or $80,000, that we wanted to make sure that we had sufficient leeway before, as we get into the final weeks. That's all I have to report regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you. I love nothing more than on budget and on time. So
yeah, the committee's really been working on it. There's been a lot of concern about it, but everything is still on time and on budget. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Kurt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we had a meeting with the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Task Force last night. Trooper Eklund was our guest. He kind of spent a lot of time talking or taking questions from the the task force rather, and answering things that are going on in the town from the policing perspective, which is very informative. So that's pretty much that meeting. And then, let me see here, week before, we had a recreation and advisory board meeting. Bruce, the director, pretty much went over the status of all the summer programs and how they're seem to be gaining participation as the weeks go along, even though some of them are slower than usual due to a whole host of issues or different reasons why that might be. So things are starting to open back up. The lodges once again opened for rental, and as every day passes and things change, the staff over there is keeping that up to date, so it could be opened and used to the fullest. So that was pretty much that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. I'm assuming this is a yes, but can you confirm that they have their most current up-to-date programming online? So maybe we can share that on social media so people who may not be thinking about summer options know that they're out there and available?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. Yep.
I will make a note to look for their flyer to go out and post it so people know that it's available. Thank you. Okay, so there was an Eastern Highland Health District meeting that I'm going to ask Mike to report on, and then there was a meeting on the Commission on People with Disabilities, and they are moving right along. They're actually looking at putting content on their town web page and making sure that it's accessible to everybody. Bev is also on, so she can help if I mess anything up here, Bev. But looking at, this is excellent. This is what we wanted them to be doing, is looking at resources available to our residents in a multi-level lens. So starting with Tolland resources, then state resources, then national resources, and they're looking at creating almost what they're classifying as a visual timeline of needs and services and things to be aware of, starting out at B2-3, going to pre-K, IEPs, professional advocate, mediation, outplacement, transition, guardianship, housing, employment, etc. So really kind of looking at the full stage and spectrum of needs for people with disabilities in town. And again, linking to Tolland resources, state resources, national resources. I think what they're doing here is really something that, Kurt, maybe you guys can take back to the mental health and substance use. As an example of kind of gathering all of the information and the resources that are available to all of our residents and putting them in one place so it's easily accessible. They're also doing a bunch of doodle polls to kind of look at future meetings and starting to kind of explore whether or not some of these meetings can be held as like town meetings, community meetings. So kind of broadening the scope so that these resources are available to anybody in town that want to look at it. And they're looking at a few different options right now. So planning for the future, understanding government benefits, stuff like that. And then having speakers come in to talk about those things for people in the community and for people in our, not only our people with disabilities, but our regular town community, so people can really be aware of the issues that people are experiencing or the services that we provide or ways to get involved and ways to kind of create more open community. So we have inclusiveness of all of our town members. So they're doing a lot. I think they're actually kind of really killing it. They're also looking at having Dr. Willett come in to provide some resources and information from the school side. And they're also looking at talking to the EDC to invite them to future meetings, to work with them to introduce ideas and suggestions. One of the things we did at a state level was really looking at the governor's workforce committee to find ways for employment opportunities for people with disabilities and having established paths and coaches and people to help along the way. Happy to say that that passed. Worked on that with a couple of people to really kind of push the need that we have out here in the smaller towns. Granted, it didn't go far enough in my opinion, because we have some needs out here that we really need to address regarding transportation availability and housing availability. But this was at least a really good start on providing workforce help. So I really think that they're doing some good stuff over there in that commission. And I encourage everybody to look at the minutes, attend a meeting if you can. And I'm really happy to see what they're going to have available on the website for people for resources. And Mike, I don't know if you want to maybe go over the Eastern Highland Health District meeting.
Sure. Hi, Mike Rosen, Town Manager. We had a relatively quick health district meeting last Thursday. Really only two things of note. One was during the community sharing portion. A lot of our peer communities were also having similar discussions about what they were doing for masking in their town hall buildings and other municipal facilities, not school, but municipal facilities. And from that discussion, when we talked about, at that point last Thursday, we were still requiring masking for everybody within town hall for the duration of their stay, regardless of their vaccination status. But I found that we were sort of a little bit behind the curve where other towns have already implemented masks optional. And therefore, as of today, this was part of my manager's report, but as of today, within town facilities and buildings, masking is no longer required for those who have been vaccinated. It is still required if you have not been vaccinated. So that's just a change that had gone out via an e-blast yesterday due to the health district meeting. So we're in line with our peers again now. And the other thing was that the health director asked if all of the member towns of the health district would consider there's some COVID-related expenses that weren't reimbursed to the health district, and they asked if all of the towns would, by populations, how many people are in each town, split the bill. And so for us, it only amounts to about $5,400 for Tolland. It's a one-time expense. And the health director asked if we could use ARP, American Rescue Plan money, to potentially, pay for that. That money would flow through to the town from the federal government, well, to the state, to the federal, to the local government, and we would just kind of earmark that $5,400 to be given to reimburse the health district. So what I had said in the meeting was that, the town council needs to make that decision. So it'll be something that's going to be part of the list of potential ideas that the ARP money could be used for Tolland. I will put that $5,400, on that spreadsheet as something that I think, everybody understands that some expenses weren't reimbursed, and it's relatively small dollars that we can help them out in this case. Especially if we can use federal money to do that. But yeah, that's really all that happened at the health district last week. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have the ARP money on an agenda in July, correct?
Next meeting, yes.
Yes. All right. So yeah, I would just say add that to it, and we can discuss it in that meeting. Okay. So that's it for liaisons. That gets us to new business. 8.1, consideration of a resolution for the town manager and town attorney to enter into a negotiated purchase and sale agreement for the Weigold property at a cost of $0. Mike?
Okay, hi everybody. Mike Rosen, Town Manager. So this property that we're talking about today is the Weigold, or also sometimes commonly referred to as the Donkeyville Mill property. It's east of Weigold Road, or right around where North River Road becomes Weigold Road, just to the east of that. And it's a property that multiple stakeholders have been in touch with the owner of that parcel for multiple years. They've done site walks, they've talked and waited to see how things went through probate and et cetera. So we're at the stage now where the Land Acquisition Advisory Committee and the Conservation Commission have both reviewed this parcel and have given recommendation that the town should enter into a purchase and sale agreement for this property, specifically because the owner is willing to gift and donate it for a cost of $0 to the town. So what we're on tonight's agenda to talk about is if the council wants to make that decision tonight. Ultimately, but as the resolution or as the item states, we're looking for the go-ahead that Rick and I can enter into formal negotiations with the property owner. Even though the dollar amount is $0, there's other things we have to iron out within the purchase and sale agreement. But we have a couple of people here today too. I know Jim Hutton, the chair of Conservation Commission, and he's also on land acquisition, is in the room. There's a few other, I know the planning director's here as well. So if there's any questions of council, but really the only ask today is that you would let us go forward and try to negotiate and take ownership of this parcel. Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mike? If we have questions for Jim or anybody else, you can ask and I can filter them through. But does anybody on my council have any questions regarding what he just talked about? Steve.
Just one quick clarifying question. Assuming that we do authorize and purchase and go through the negotiations and the purchase goes through, what is the next step in terms of designating the organization that's, I know it's sort of assumed that the Conservation Commission would take charge of the entire property, but what is the next step after that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was going to say, I know since I've been here, I think it was for the Wannet Park, we also at the time the council had to formally designate the stewards of the Wannet Park to be the Conservation Commission. And I think they may have even looped in the Conservation Corps as well. But we do have to put that on an agenda in the future about who will maintain it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Just to kind of make sure that we have everything that we need. I think I know the answers to them, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So with this piece of property coming to the town, are there any limitations on this gift?
I'm not sure I don't know what that means. I mean, what do you mean by that?
Well, I believe when I first spoke to somebody about this, it was that one of the conditions, which I'm totally fine with, but I want people to know, is that this property was going to be gifted to the town in perpetuity, that we would not sell it, that we would not develop it, that it would stay as an open, conserved space. So is that still the understanding of the sale agreement?
Madam Chair, the town attorney and I have not drafted the agreement yet. We're waiting for your go-ahead before we draft the agreement. So that's something that, we would talk to what does the owner want in exchange for the $0 purchase price. I don't know. I mean, anecdotally, and I think Mr. Hutton can probably help us out, but I think the answer is that they're looking to see this be preserved open space for perpetuity. Is that right, Jim?
Yes, Mike, that's my understanding. And Mr. Weichelt had shared some example language that he had from previous deed that would indicate he wanted it to be open space in perpetuity as one of the conditions.
Okay, and also then maybe Jim, you would know, are we going to, I think the other part that I just wanted to make sure, are we going to keep it should be named after the Weigold family, correct? Like we'll keep the recognition that this was land donated by the family to the town. We're not going to, maybe an AKA Donkeyville, but that it would be the Weigold property.
Yes, that would be the Conservation Commission's leanings and desire, but I don't recall Mr. Weigold asking for any specific naming of the property.
Okay, all right. Well, if they do, then again, I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. This is a great piece of property. It's something that I think can be just used by the town members. Having it as open space, it's beautiful. There are things that I think this is going to bring. This is just a big win. I'm excited about it. I'm happy for it. So, Mike, after the agreement is drafted, will the next part be that it comes back to council to again approve it? Right now, we're just giving you the go ahead to enter into an agreement. Is that the point of this one here?
Let me just ask the town attorney that question. I don't know if I know Rick's on the line, but Rick, what do you think about that? I mean, does this give us the bandwidth to finalize it, in your opinion?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I would say when Mike said that we would like you to give us permission to negotiate a purchase and sale agreement, I would expect at that time that Mr. Weigold is going to ask for whatever he and perhaps other members of the trust want in there. And I think that Mike and I would have to use our best judgment. And if we found something that he wanted that we thought may be controversial or maybe something that you folks should consider, I would expect to come back to the council. If it was a vanilla deal that had no other items in it that we thought were a problem, we could just execute it with your authority tonight, unless if that's all right with the council.
I'm good with that. I think now that I've expressed my two things, that I would like to agree to that it be in perpetuity open space, and I have absolutely no issue with naming rights to the Weigold family. Lou, you have your hand up, and if anybody else has anything that they would like to kind of add, Lou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and as I've expressed in prior discussions regarding purchasing of property, it is just my concern regarding whether or not this. I know that we're talking about this being open space in perpetuity per the deed. But then my concern is this something that could still be considered developable land? And even though that there may be a provision in the deed, if there's a statutory change as far as what a definition of open space would be, how that would affect it, if at all. So, I mean, that's one of my questions I have is if this is considered something that could be, a developable parcel. So
I can ask Mr. Hutton here, Jim, or either Bob Rubino. But when I toured the piece of property with Mr. Rubino, I don't think there's enough there to develop on. I think it's a beautiful lake. It's a beautiful river. It's a lot of woods. It's some very old historic dams and that awesome mill. But
right, and I understand that. I mean, I've seen the property before. We did that tour on a prior occasion. Out there, but I just have to express that concern because that is something that I think has been expressed previously in the legislature, and I just want to make sure that we examine all possible issues.
Absolutely. I understand. Sophia?
Yes, I just had one question just with regard to, I guess it's for the attorneys, with it being open space, with open space in perpetuity, but would putting something in like a cell tower, would that be considered? I know I just saw your face, Tammy, but it's one of those things where it wouldn't be considered an active use of land. But if a company were to come in and say that they wanted to put a cell tower there, that if any agreement that is drafted, if the property owner, as delivering it onto us, if there's just to consider what to do with air rights, meaning if we put billboards or cell towers or anything on there that would take away from what their intention is, just to ensure that that's fleshed out, because should the town look toward, bringing in revenues by something like having Verizon or, Comcast drop a cell tower there, that it wouldn't, if there's going to be a restriction, that would be fleshed out within the details of the contract. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I think nobody else has any questions. So, Steve?
All right, Steve Jones, I would make a motion that be it resolved by the Tolland Town Council that hereby authorizes the town manager and attorney to enter into a negotiated purchase and sale agreement for the Weigold property at a cost of $0, approved by the Tolland Town Council on June 22nd, 2021.
This is Brenda.
Sophia Johnson, second.
Okay, all those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I am an aye, so that is unanimous. Mike, Rick, go on and negotiate. So that's a tough price to beat, but negotiate.
We will, thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Tammy, before we continue, can I just ask you to take a look at the next items on our agenda and make sure, like if, I don't want Lisa to have to wait to the end if there's a couple that she doesn't have to be here for, you know what I mean? Is there any rearranging that needs to be done so that we can ensure town staff can leave early if they're able to?
I don't know if we would have to, so what were you thinking, moving 8?
Well, I was thinking 8.3 moved down to the bottom. I know we're going to need a few people for that, but I don't know that maybe Beverly and Lisa need to be there for that. I'm not sure. I'm asking for input and, trying to be cognizant of how hard our town staff works.
Mike?
It's up to you if you want to rearrange the agenda with a 2/3 vote. Council's certainly able to do that. I mean, I know I don't want to speak for the staff on the line. I think many are interested to hear the 8.3 item.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think, well, it's definitely going to impact them. So I agree. Thank you for the suggestion, Brenda. Going to go to 8.2, consideration and action on the suspense tax list for June 30th, 2021.
Sure. Hi, Mike Rosen, Town Manager. Also want to recognize Michelle Manis is here, our wonderful collector, and thank you very much for being here. We propose, so tonight is an annual business item we have, which is basically the tax accounts that we were not able to collect upon, that they do remain collectible, but we have 105 accounts that total in the amount of just under $35,000 that have, after multiple attempts to collect, or unable to locate the person, or some are bankrupt and some are deceased. These are the things that we have not been able to collect upon, but we do have a 99% collection rate in this town, which is phenomenal. There are some that just unfortunately get through. Michelle, if that's probably about right, I guess. I don't know if there's anything you can specifically say, but we do reach out in many different ways to try to collect upon these things, including calling around to other towns to locate people, searching online, contacting probate regarding people who have died, deceased accounts. And again, these are just the accounts that remain, to this point, uncollected. And then also, so we continue to pursue collection of these taxes. We turn some over to law offices to also try to get collections on as well. And that's at no cost to the town. And so what we're asking for tonight in the draft resolution is to hereby approve the 2021 suspense tax list in the amount of $34,927.99.
$34,927. Hi, Michelle. Haven't seen you in a while. Welcome. Does anybody have any questions regarding this item? Okay, not seeing any. Mike, I guess the only question that I have, and I think I've asked this before, but I think it's worthy of asking again. When we send this suspense list over and other people go and try to pursue receiving the taxes, does the town get any portion of that, or does it just stay with the people who buy the list?
Yeah, is it 50-50, Michelle? Do we get half or no? I don't know if you want to answer that, Michelle. You should see a little pop-up that says unmute. Do you see the little thing that says unmute there? I don't know, Lisa, do you know off the top of your head? It's not 50-50?
No, it would not be.
All right, I got it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Michelle's okay.
Right, it actually, they charge 15%, but we actually would collect the taxes that are due. So it's not 50-50. So they charge a 15% fee on top of whatever is due to the town.
Okay.
So they're charging the person that they're collecting from.
In addition, right, to whatever the taxes are due, the taxes and interest due, they would charge 15% on top of that as their fee. And then we would collect our portion.
Well, does that include the taxes and the penalty, the 18% penalty?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Nobody else has any other questions? Steve?
All right. Steve Jones, I make a motion that be it resolved by the Tolland Town Council that it hereby approves the June 30th, 2021 suspense list in the amount of $34,927.99, approved by the Tolland Town Council on June 22nd, 2021.
Lou Lobel, second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Brenda,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Lou,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That gets us now to 8.3, discussion of the Executive Order 7B expiration.
Great. I guess I can start off with this one. So hi, everybody. Mike Rosen, Town Manager. So this one, this item probably, like was mentioned, will probably take a little bit, but I do have kind of a preamble that I had written this morning. You know, again, we're kind of adapting, we're rolling with the punches. So I have sort of like a 1 or 2 page summary that I just like to read. I can share with the clerk afterwards, but I didn't have the ability to send it to council just because it was within the 24-hour window of this meeting. So I'm just going to kind of read it. So, you know, we have been operating remote public meetings under Executive Order 7B for about 15 months now, and the town of Tolland has adapted well to this measure. However, Executive Order 7B is going to expire on June 30th, 2021, and we now find ourselves at the crossroads of how do we best conduct public meetings going forward. So what actually happens on July 1st? Executive Order 7B expires, and originally the thought was without that provision in place, the town would automatically revert back to what it was doing pre-COVID-19 pandemic, which was operating in-person public meetings held in public venues subject to the Freedom of Information Act. We had been working on a remote participation policy for officials, which we held off on implementing until after the pandemic to see if anything changed due to the pandemic. In that draft, remote participation was only allowed as a matter of need and not convenience. With the executive order expiring, we didn't have much choice except to blanketly go back to in-person meetings, as remote meetings would no longer be permissible after July 1st. However, while we were preparing this agenda item for tonight's agenda, last week, State Senate Bill 1202, also known as the Implementer Bill, passed the State House and the State Senate and is currently awaiting signature by the governor. This new law does in fact give public agencies after July 1st and until April 30th, 2022, the ability to hold meetings accessible to the public by means of electronic equipment or by means of electronic equipment in conjunction with an in-person meeting. The town attorney has opined that the town charter allows town boards to make their own protocols for meetings. Therefore, the town council cannot mandate to any other town board in which manner it will conduct its meetings, so long as it complies with FOIA and the measures in the implementer bill. Thus, each town board will have to post a meeting and decide which way it wishes to conduct its business for the time period of July 1st, 2021 through at least April 30th, 2022, when the implementer bill initially expires. I would recommend that all town boards post a remote meeting using Zoom sometime in the next few weeks to gather together virtually and discuss what it would prefer to do. Again, the 3 choices are holding a meeting in person, like the old days, in person by means of electronic equipment, AKA hybrid, or solely by means of electronic equipment, AKA fully remote. A few other items to note for boards looking for help to make this decision, including, I'm sure, the town council, which may want to discuss tonight what it wants to do after July 1st. Per the implementer bill, if an agency conducts a meeting solely by means of electronic equipment after July 1st, then upon written request at least 24 hours prior to the meeting, a member of the public must be provided with a physical location and any electronic equipment necessary to attend the meeting in real time in such a manner as to allow that member of the public to participate in the same manner in which they would participate at an in-person meeting at which they were in attendance. What this means is that if a board is having a purely remote meeting and someone requests to be accommodated in the fashion I just described, the board would have to make arrangements to find a location and equipment for that person to view and participate in the remote meeting. This option will almost certainly have some cost impact, whether it be for the technology used to view the meeting or the staff time to oversee the space where the accommodation is taking place. Option 2, Any public agency that conducts an in-person only meeting shall provide members of the public agency the opportunity to participate by means of electronic equipment, except that a public agency is not required to adjourn or postpone a meeting if a member loses the ability to participate because of an interruption, failure, or degradation of that member's connection by their electronic equipment, unless that member's participation is necessary to form a quorum. What this means is that if you're having an in-person meeting and a member of that board requests an electronic accommodation to that meeting, accommodations would have to be made to have that meeting in a space where the proper technology exists to have the remote participator be able to seamlessly interact with those in person. This doesn't extend to members of the public, but just to those on the board to participate remotely. If there are no requests from board members to have a remote component, then no remote component is required. Only a member of the board can request this accommodation, and although the law doesn't stipulate this, it would be helpful if a policy or practice was put in place to have a cutoff of when this request can be made so that proper arrangements can be attempted. Our only room location in the town facility that is fully equipped to have a remote participator is the town council chambers on the 6th floor of Town Hall. No other room has the computer and TV screen and OWL camera setup that makes this a doable measure. Inherently, there will be conflicts for that room. And even if council were to agree tonight that it would like to outfit more rooms with the technology, it will be a while for the procurements to take place. And I certainly foresee issues. Meetings may have to be rescheduled to nights where the chambers is vacant in order to accommodate remote participators. Only remote board participators would receive the Zoom link to the meeting. And just as a caveat, there is also a learning curve for board members and staff alike who will need training on how the technology works, and there may be growing pains and things may go wrong at first. I can imagine a scenario where a public hearing or perhaps something about budget might get canceled or postponed due to technical issues and the fallout that might cause. And then number 3, option 3, lastly, there's the hybrid option, which mirrors many of the issues that I just talked about in the in-person option if there are remote participators. The difference being that now members of the public are also remotely participating as well as board members. Again, the major themes here are how many rooms is council willing to outfit for what might end up being a temporary measure, as well as who is going to keep an eye on everything that is taking place electronically while there are folks also physically in the room. And cybersecurity and what they used to call Zoom bombing will be more difficult to keep track of with the hybrid option. There's also some town boards that do not have staff and will have to figure out the technology for themselves and are responsible for the meeting happening without interruption, and the initial period of time where we will not be able to accommodate multiple hybrid meetings happening simultaneously within Town Hall. So appreciate you all letting me kind of read that statement here that I was working on for a little bit today, but that kind of just lays out the 3 scenarios that council has to consider for itself, and each board in town, including the elected boards, including the appointed boards, and including the boards that report to the town manager, will all have to parse this out in their opinion about what works for them best. So to sum up one more time, council cannot mandate or dictate to the boards what they must do, but all we can do is offer them the information to help them make their best decision. That's kind of what I've got for my opening preamble.
Thank you, Mike. So the very first thing I want to say before we launch into what I'm sure is going to be a very vigorous conversation on this is I would like to ask that you please get this information out to all of the other boards, elected and appointed, so they can start having these conversations, and also if we can please strongly suggest that they either get it on their next agenda or make an adjustment to their agenda to talk about it on their next agenda, or schedule an independent meeting so they can have something in place before July 1st, because the executive order expires on June 30th. So I think all of the boards and commissions are going to need time to talk about this, think about it, It's a little bit of a hodgepodge here because with each board deciding, we can have some boards that go fully in person, some boards that want to go full remote, some boards that want to go hybrid. And as you said, this is going to cause a little bit of havoc in scheduling and in rooms and in equipment availability. If we have 2 meetings on one night, that's 2 separate rooms with 2 separate sets of equipment. Plus, if they're hybrid, then some people are going to be in chambers. So you're talking about a lot of logistics to try to figure out in 8 days. So the sooner we can get this information out to people and they can start to mull it over, I think the better. We have some commissions that aren't going to be meeting before then that are probably going to have to hold a meeting to decide this.
What they could do too is, even though the executive order expires on June 30th, the implementer bill does allow meetings to happen fully remote after July 1st. So as I had said in my write-up, that boards that meet between, after July 1st may just want to have their first meeting be remote only and then figure out what they want to do going forward after that. So we're not necessarily hamstrung by the June 30th cutoff, but yes, any board that's meeting between now and then should have this on their agenda. But again, this is hot off the presses. I mean, the implementer bill passed on Thursday. It hasn't even been signed by the governor yet. So we're rolling with the punches here.
Yep, it has not been signed yet. I just checked before I logged on, so it has not been fully implemented yet. I see no reason why he's not going to sign it. It was his bill, but it has not been signed as of yet. Okay, let's start going around. Any counselors have questions they want to discuss? Let's try to have our questions for Mike. He can answer the questions, and then we can kind of discuss it in more depth after we get initial rounds of questions. And so everybody will have one opportunity to ask questions to start with, and then if people have more questions, we'll go back around. Starting with Sophia.
Yes, Sophia Johnson speaking. Mike, I just want to let you know that I fully trust and rely on your expertise as our administrator and operations manager with regard to what you perceive would be the best option, financially and just logistically. So I have my opinion, of course, but as I'm not the one that's working with the day-to-day operations, I'm not the one that's going to have to sit there and allocate different employees to be able to facilitate. There's, a learning curve also involved. That's a huge undertaking, even though we've had with the level that we have right now. Just last meeting, the veteran said, we've lost people from our board because they weren't as, technologically savvy. So I'm okay with whatever our operations manager or town manager decides. I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mike, first question would be, besides the council chambers, what rooms could be fitted with the necessary technology to do a hybrid model? Have you given any thought to that? And I guess kind of going on second of that, is there a hierarchy of first come, first serve for the boards? It's like if council and I don't know, the Historic Society have a meeting on the same night, who gets, is that something that's exists, or is it kind of, how would that work out if we only have limited space for a hybrid? Just 2 thoughts for me. That's all I got right now.
Tammy, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We're gonna try to question and answer, freeform this, and then we can.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to just listen or okay. So for the hybrid rooms, my first thought was you probably want to outfit one of the conference rooms, either B or C, that's on the same level as Public Works. Those are smaller rooms, so you'd be able to have some of the smaller boards meet there, either hybridly or with an in-person. Actually, you can have them meet in person in that room, and if should there be the need for a participator to remote in, we would need to procure a television screen, a dedicated computer, and an OWL camera or some competitor to that, but I just will use OWL camera for tonight. Those 3 things, that kind of triangle, is what we're going to require for to make hybrid or in person with a participator remotely work. So I think the first one would be one of those rooms for some of the smaller boards that would work. But I can also envision a situation where council's meeting in the chambers and Birch Grove Building Committee wants to meet. And I think that's where we would probably want to outfit the library program room with the only caveat there that library is having programs again, and we may have a conflict where if there's a library program that's been advertised and got attendance and everything, I don't think we can oust that, for a public meeting. So I would say that we probably would want to look at the library program room as a third backup, but I wouldn't necessarily. I think that's more based on the library's availability. However, it does afford the opportunity for a larger space, and you do already have in that room a projector screen that can drop down. So I don't know that you would necessarily need a TV as well, unless volume can be pumped through the AV in that room. But we may need to put a TV in there too. But I would say those are the two. I would do one of the small conference rooms and then the library program room, and then if that way the other small conference room can be for boards that are meeting in person.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mike.
And then I think was the other question. The hierarchy. I mean, that's more a tradition. I mean, obviously, the elected boards in town traditionally get the chambers. So PCC Monday, Council Tuesday, Board of Ed Wednesday, ZBA Thursday, and everybody else kind of has to find room. I know there are some Thursdays on our town calendar where we have 4 or 5 board meetings going on at the same time. So we're going to be fully beefed up. And there's a possibility too that, on that 4th or 5th meeting, if everybody's doing hybrid, I don't know where we're going to put people. So I don't know if we're going to recreation or senior center. I mean, there's all sorts of, I don't know. I don't know, Kurt. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it.
I have a little bit of follow-up on that. Does it have to be videoed to be a hybrid model? Could there be like a speakerphone with no video?
The hybrid model says you have to have everybody being able to participate the same way. I think you can, as long as the people on the phone or the laptop have access to the materials. But I could see that being a problem though for land use boards where they may have a map that gets unrolled right there, and then those folks won't be able to have the same information as the people in the room. I'm not an expert or a lawyer here, so I mean, I'd have to. The implementer bill is 800 plus pages long, but there is only a couple. But there's a couple of sections that specifically pertain to this this discussion that we're having. So I'm not sure if I think it's as long as everybody has the same ability to participate. That's the important part.
Not to get anyone in trouble, but we did Parks and Rec did have an outdoor meeting spaced out at the pavilion at the Crandall, and somebody did call in, and we just kind of had a phone thrown on the table. So not to get Bruce in trouble, but I could see how that could work for smaller boards. Whether it's within the bounds of everything is a different question. But
well, that was okay what you just said, because it was outdoors, it wasn't indoors, and that's why we were saying the pavilion could work for some boards. In the meantime, I went to a board meeting last year. I remember you were there too, of rec boards. So that's okay. And putting a phone down at that time didn't have any issue with the problem. But I think there's a lot in the implementer bill, and I know we have a state rep as well, and I talked to actually our state senator earlier today, Dan Champagne, to see if he could give me some of the Cliff Notes version of this. So I did speak with his office, and that's what I kind of boiled down the write-up was based on some of the conversations I've had.
Anything else, Kurt?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
By the way, I love your library. Brenda.
When you move me that fast, I lose the unmute button. Okay, Brenda Flusy here. A couple of them have been answered. What about public meetings that use the space? We do have some groups that use conference rooms in the town hall. And the reason why I'm asking about that is because we have cleaning and mask requirements, I assume, in the town hall. For the public meetings or the public groups that use our conference space, for our boards and commissions, what is going to be, I assume the mask requirements are going to be the same as what they are for the town hall, meaning masks are required if you're not vaccinated. But are we still going to have to follow through with spacing, a 6-foot spacing between people who are masked in public spaces? And do we have the capacity to follow through on cleaning for all of these spaces when we have multiple meetings, especially if we were to have back-to-back meetings? I'm concerned about the safety of our town staff. I don't know everybody's status, their health status, but I want to ensure that everybody, we're going to have the public coming in and out for meetings. And then Thursday nights, the town hall is open until 7:30 at night. So there will be an overlap of the town hall being open and the spaces being used for boards and commissions. If we already talked about how many times a month these can be used, has there been any discussion? I'm going to start choking in a second, sorry. Has there been any discussion about using classrooms, because classrooms have been able to do remote learning for this entire year? And if we were to use classrooms, would we be able to use town staff, cleaning for those areas? And then also the safety of the kids, if we were able to do that, to ensure that there's no overlap between events that are happening at the school and possibly using classroom space. That's a lot. I don't expect you to have answers for all of them right now.
I think I wrote all the questions down if he misses any, but Mike,
Yeah, I don't know if maybe there's spacing is kind of, there's no more requirements for that. It's the 6-foot spacing and the frequency of cleanings and all that. I guess actually Mike Wilkinson just kind of texted me. He said transmission of COVID on surfaces has been shown to be negligible. So they are, we aren't doing the, as much of the cleanings, and the 6-foot spacing isn't necessarily a concern at this time. But we would, I think to your original point, the masking requirements would be in effect for all town facilities. So I don't know if were you referring to like the lodge or the pavilion as well, or?
Yeah, I guess if we're having meetings there. And then let me add one more thing to that mask while you're forming your response. Let's say I need to wear a mask at a meeting. Then people can't read my lips. They might not be able to understand me through the microphone, something like that. So, how do we ensure that there's equity there, that if someone is wearing a mask and has to participate in an in-person meeting, how do we ensure that they can be heard and understood by every member of the public and every member that's attending the meeting?
Yeah, I have to be honest. I don't think that was fleshed out yet. I mean, I know they make clear masks or the face shield guards that you can see through. I don't think we have a supply of them at Town Hall. I imagine folks that, maybe they would have something like that they would bring if they needed to. But I don't think that was considered. And also the issue with the classrooms, although I didn't speak to Dr. Willett directly, but I honestly don't think that it would be something that would have to be negotiated in the custodian contract, I think, to have them go over to the schools. And I really don't think that's going to be allowable to do cleanings and stuff at the schools. I think they have their own staff there that does that. But I'm not saying that it's a non-starter in terms of having business meetings at the schools. I think it'll just require discussion. But it is also possible that Board of Ed meetings could take place at schools since it's their facilities,
right?
Rather than coming to the town hall side.
Yeah, and then my last question, I'm sorry, I had to stop because of the tickle in my throat. My last question about masking and stuff is, let's say I am a vaccinated person, but I do contract COVID. I mean, it has happened in the past. Are we going to put any stipulations asking people who have tested positive, even though they've been vaccinated, to not come to meetings? Or make accommodations for them if they are on the board and need to conduct business? So I guess that's something for us to consider depending on which of the three options we do.
I think in all options, elected officials have the ability to be remote. So even if it's all in person, say we say nope, we're going back in person, and Brenda, you contracted COVID, or you didn't want to come in for a meeting, you could say, I am going to participate remotely, and we would have to have a Zoom just for you to be part of. The public would not have that, but you would as an elected official. Hybrid, obviously you could be in person or not, and fully remote it would. So I think at all times an elected member has the option to participate remotely.
Okay, cool. And does Mr. Rosen has the option too, just in case, or, if Ms. Hancock or
so you mean one of the staff and not necessarily?
Well, anybody that we need to have there to conduct business if we were to do in person or hybrid, in person. If anybody that needs to be there in order for us to conduct our meeting can't be because of their COVID status or because they're in quarantine, or, we don't know what the next few months are going to hold. I think we're going in a good direction. I'm praying for it. But, it's something that we're going to have to flesh out, I think.
So I do know that the legislation is silent on anybody besides elected officials. So I think that's where Mike was maybe saying we would have to kind of institute some sort of policy on our own for that. Mike, I think.
Yeah, as everybody has said, it's line 7006 in Bill 1202, but there is no mention of anybody except the board member, and not just elected, it could be appointed or whatever. So the board member that doesn't want to or can't attend in person has to notify somebody, doesn't say who, has to notify somebody that they'd like to participate remotely. And then we would have to give that, and assuming this is an in-person meeting and not a hybrid meeting, then they would have to give notice, and we'd have to create a Zoom link or go to meeting or web, whatever, and give that just to the board member so that they may participate remotely, but that link is not to be shared with members of the public. They're not. If this is an in-person meeting, then it's only for the board member to participate. And I think that also extends, when I said member of the public, at least as written, that would include the staff as well, so that we'd have to come in person. But I guess you could always go with a policy to piggyback off of the implementer bill. I don't think there's any reason that couldn't do that. But again, the implementer bill also expires in April, so it's not a forever thing unless it gets, of course, extended.
Right. I know it's only a temporary measure right now that will be reevaluated. It's only good through April. So whatever we decide now in relation to the implementer is only effective through April. And then at that point, I'm not quite sure what would happen. I'm assuming there would have to be separate legislation that would be passed if it was taken up as to something they wanted to either continue or eliminate to go back to regular in-person meetings at that point, because it's only through April 30th. Lou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to address your last issue, if there's a built-in sunset clause, then that means it would automatically, and I'll leave this up to Rick to correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that it would automatically end and that we would go back to the original revision of the public meeting requirements. Would that be accurate, Rick?
Yes.
Okay. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut every once in a while. So
clock is right.
I'm familiar with that concept.
No, but I want to say it up front that I would like to increase or keep the standard of participation that we have here over the past year and almost a year and a half at the same level. But it is something that I would like to have us try and phase in some type of in-person meeting with the town council. So I understand all the parameters here that the options are that we continue fully remote as is, that we go to fully in-person, but then we have to make provisions for council members to allow them, if they request to go remotely, to provide that, but the public would still have to be, that the public could not participate remotely. And then the last one is we go into a hybrid model where we have in-person with the town as a town council, with the provisions for the town council members that would like to participate remotely, but also allow for the town residents to participate remotely via link. Is that accurate, Mike?
Yeah, that's accurate, Lou. The only curveball that I think you might have missed was that for the remote only option, there is the thing in there about if a member of the public requests an accommodation for an in-person accommodation to a remote meeting, they would be afforded the opportunity to come to, I'm assuming, town hall or some building, whether it's the library or whatnot, and they would be given the opportunity to sit in a room to be able to view the meeting in real time through iPad, laptop, maybe even a cell phone, and somebody's got to sit there with them to make sure that they don't run off with the technology, so then you're going to have the staff costs. But any member of the public has the ability to request that accommodation. That must be made 24 hours ahead of the meeting time in writing. So that's it for a remote only meeting.
Okay. Oh, that's for remote only. So if we go hybrid, we do not have to allow for those other provisions for the public, or I thought that we had to allow that no matter what.
No, I think if it's a hybrid option, you don't have to do what I just mentioned a moment ago. I think, basically if the person is going to come to town hall to sit with an iPad, they can come to the room where the meeting's taking place.
Okay. That clarifies it a little bit more for me. That's where my misconception was. My request would be is that we get input from our IT providers and sort of have them take a look at the difficulties and the requirements for setting up all the different types of scenarios where if we go to a hybrid, which would be my preference, just expressing my personal preference. I don't expect everybody to agree with that, but going with a hybrid, what would be required, and then to also identify not just going along the same lines of what Brenda has stated and other people have stated, taking a look at some of the other possible facilities, not just the town hall rooms, because I know there's a shortage of gathering rooms that we have there, but any other facilities that may be able to be used, such as the schools, such as a library, such as anything that we as a town would have the ability to use. That way we'd be able to sort of sit down and understand what's available, not just as a town council, but as all boards, so that we can say, okay, look, that these 5 facilities are ones that we can equip with this equipment, which may alleviate some of the problems for not having enough room, and then be able to essentially hardwire those in some way or do something with them in some way. Just examine the possibilities so we have a full operating fully with full knowledge. I don't know if I don't want to too big of an ask, but that's sort of something that I think would help us identify, or at least help me understand a little bit more in making my decision. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think my only concern here, Mike, is if everybody decides to do something different, as Mike has stated clearly to everybody here, if we have to provide equipment and space to members of the public to come to town hall or whatever to participate remotely in another room from where everybody is meeting, there's also, somebody has to sit there with them. Like there has to be a staff in the room to handle technology issues and everything else. So that's.
I'm sorry, but my understanding was that would apply only if we went fully remote.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. If we did the fully remote option, so there's a possibility that any of our other boards or commissions can do that. And at that point, even though we can't make that decision for those boards, that responsibility would fall back to, I would think in that case, it's going to fall back to town hall to have that space and provide staff, whether it's planning and zoning and it's David's area that has to provide a staff member to be there, or the Board of Ed has to provide a staff member to be there, or us, the town council, have to provide a staff member to be there to help that person with the meeting. So that possibility exists if anybody picks that fully remote option. So Mike, I don't know how we kind of harangue that piece of it, because this is a by board, by commission, by task force, by everybody choice. If we have people who decide to go that option, we're going to need to sort out the logistics of, like you said, a room, a camera, a TV, a computer, and a staff member or somebody to sit there with the public that is meeting in another meeting there to go over all of that.
Yes, that's accurate. If a board decides to go fully one way or the other, they're going to have to be equipped to do what you just said. And also, I mean, like all three of the options have some outcome or result that have to happen because of it. So there's no clear or winning answer. We have to think through all three. So I think that if, obviously this will be part of the conversation that these boards will be having over the next few weeks, but if I don't know what the pushback will be, or if it's like maybe we're making a mountain out of a molehill. Maybe if there are some boards that can operate successfully remote only or in person only, and I know we're thinking it through, which is what we're supposed to do here. But maybe there won't be issues if a board says we're comfortable meeting in person, all board members agree we're going to do this, and that's what they do. If they want to do remote only, and then the odd case comes up that somebody doesn't have a phone or anything in their house. Because you can participate with a phone as well. You can call into the meeting if it's a remote meeting. But if they really want to come to town hall and do that, we'll have to accommodate that if that situation comes up. But we have to plan for it, though. If the board's willing to make that leap, then we have to be willing to deal with the results of that leap. Yes, like I said, all three of them will have some outcome, including staff and training and figuring out meeting room spaces. I think my initial and immediate concern is, especially since the books are not closed yet for this fiscal year, if there are any, although they're closing, are there any upgrades that we are going to make in the near term? I'd like to know tonight so that I can start to get those purchase orders going.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Hopefully we'll be able to at least make a decision on the town council side, but we're not going to have that information from everybody else. That's why I said 8 days. If we can try to get this resolved within the 8 days, to get it done by the end of the fiscal year. I don't know that we'll be able to do that, but I'm trying to look at what Lou asked and if there was anything else there.
Well, about looking at other facilities, and obviously that would require discussions with those facilities. The recreation has a room, although I don't think they're not equipped for IT things. I mean, they could have an in-person meeting there. That would be okay. There's also, as mentioned, there's the pavilion. Obviously, there'd be no IT at the pavilion. I'm not sure if the lodge, because I don't want to impact with rentals. I think that would be not good to have routine meetings there. I think that's only saved for public events. I think, as Brenda mentioned earlier, like public events. So you might want to just and I also think the senior center closes too early, where they wouldn't be open for night meetings.
And we'd have to also send staff to those locations on those nights.
Yes, or unless the board can make accommodations, put it back on the board. If they can make accommodations, I don't know what that looks like. If you could have volunteers or something be there to oversee, but I don't know. I think, as said before, it probably will come back to staff in some way or not. And then you're also impacting, people's work weeks where, town staff works a certain number of hours a week, and we're talking about maybe having overtime or things like that. We'd have to consider what this is going to do to the staff work weeks, and if we're going to have to consider if there's a salary impact of it or cost impact.
Yeah, there would definitely be something there with that. Okay. Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few quick questions. So the first one, in regards to acquiring and procuring any potential equipment, would any of those purchases fall under either the American Rescue Plan or the Emergency Declaration Fund? And would we foresee any of those purchases while we're still under an emergency declaration? I know it's not an easy process and often doesn't result in anything, but would they be reimbursable through FEMA while we're still under a state declaration?
That was one of my questions. The ARP money, at least. I don't think we could do it under emergency declaration or FEMA. How much do we think the cost is going to be to the town in order to do this, and can it be part of the ARPA money?
Well, I guess it depends on how many rooms you want to outfit, and I don't think staff cost would be, obviously that wouldn't be part of that. So we're talking just hardware at this point. So I mean, if you were going to outfit, you probably, like I said, you need a dedicated computer, a TV monitor, and potentially a camera to be able to capture what's going on. And the reason I'm saying the owl camera, as I had demonstrated to some folks before, there's an ability for it to interact better with people in the room, to autofocus and turn to who's speaking, versus a stationary webcam, which just has a wide angle shot of what's going on. And that would be difficult to see who's speaking and things like that. So you really need something that's going to be a little better equipped than just a webcam or a stationary or even a laptop camera for that matter. So that would be too rough for what we're talking about. But I think you're looking at probably the ballpark of about $3,000 per room, because I think it's about $1,000 for the camera, about $1,000 for the TV, and about $1,000 for the computer. And maybe my estimates are off. Maybe Lisa can shake her head, yes or no, but about $3,000 per room that we're going to outfit. And I know that with the owl camera in the chambers, we had paid for that last year, and we've used it a few times, so it works well. And that's, like I said, the chambers is fully up and running. We could have hybrid meetings next week if we wanted to, but that's the only room where we have the full setup. So whether we do conference room B, C, or library, we need to pay for those things now, and I don't know that they'll be reimbursed by ARP. Or I don't know if is FEMA done already, Lisa? I don't know. Oh.
We still have some FEMA to submit to the federal government, but I'm not sure that'll be one of the things that they approve. They keep changing the rules. And at one point, porta potties to clean them were approved, or buildings, and then they didn't. So I really don't think FEMA would do it. The Declaration Fund, you can approve the use of those funds if you wanted. At this point, I think if we have some savings, or if the ARPA would cover it, which those rules are still kind of
squishy.
Yeah. But, if there's funds left over this year, maybe at least suit up at least 1 or 2 rooms just to use some of the savings from this year if you had to. So there's different options.
Okay. Thank you. The second question I had was, our boards and commissions outside of ourselves, I know we're deciding only for ourselves tonight, can they switch from one to another? Just thinking of as an example from the reports from liaisons, the Conservation Commission is having an in-person meeting on the 24th. But they, I don't want to speak for them, but they could decide maybe they want to be only remote. Would that nullify their ability to hold those second meetings in person, or are they allowed to say, okay, well, we want to hold hybrid meetings for our first meeting of the month, and then for our second meeting of the month, have it in person because we already decided we're doing site walks at the conclusion of that meeting?
So I don't think that lives in the implementer bill. I think that lives in the charter, where the charter says that each board can set how to do its own protocols for meetings. Hopefully, Rick, am I right about that? But I think maybe it's up to Rick. Am I on the right track with that? That each board can kind of decide what it wants to do at any time?
First of all, where you said it doesn't live in the implementer bill, I would agree. There's nothing in the implementer bill that I could see that says if you opt for one method on day 1, you're foreclosed from opting from another method on day 2. So I think they can change that, and it is subject to their own rules. They could have a different way of doing it.
But perhaps like with, if you, let's say you pick a board in town and they want to go in person only and they find that it's problematic, then they could take it back up on another agenda and switch it with a majority vote, probably. I would think that since they're allowed to set their own protocols, that's,
I would agree with that.
At any time they can revisit it.
Agreed.
Okay, great. And then for at least the council's end, for staff video recording, was there a big breakdown of how that would be handled between fully remote, hybrid, or in person? I know, right now we're using Zoom, so it's being recorded and uploaded to the cloud. And obviously in person, we pretty much go back to, I think, Lisa doing the video recording, and probably and also Lisa P, Lisa B recording, Lisa P doing the minutes. How would they be impacted by us doing one of those 3 options, if you have that answer? And or would they have to be with the designated staff, or in the event that we go fully remote and someone wants to be there in person, would they be the staff member required, or allowed to be the staff member to be in attendance at town hall, to be with the person to assist them with technology and receive that training? Sorry, that was a very long-winded question, but you can break it down as you need.
Yeah, the latter part of that, I might want to check with our HR manager, Mike, about that, just because, you know, the recording clerk job has a certain job description attached to it, and I don't know that we're adding something to it without, you know, having to compensate for it or whatnot. But I think you detailed it accurately, Steve, where if it was an in-person only, I think we would have the handheld camera back in the chambers, and CVC I know feeds from that. So basically, you know, right now we're on Zoom. I know Nick is here, and we're live streaming to television. But we would go back to doing the old way, which was the actual tripod camera. The fully remote or hybrid would probably stay with Zoom as I think you would probably have Zoom be the recorder of both of those things. But also because, don't forget, if any board, this applies to any board, we happen to do recordings of the council, BOE, and PZC just because we want people to see what's going on for it to be on TV. But if a board is in person, there's no requirement that their meeting be recorded. So like PCC veterans, they wouldn't have to record their in-person meetings anymore. But if it is a hybrid or a fully remote, then yes, you do still need to record these meetings. And thankfully, Zoom allows the functionality to do that. You just click the button and you're good to go. And having tested out the OWL camera, because that's why the OWL camera connects to a laptop or a computer. And since you have that connection, you can record directly from the laptop. So you're all set with that.
Okay. And then last question that I had is, and I don't know if this is a question either in regards to the implementer or if our charter takes precedence, but would we be able to still pursue and perhaps kind of reimagine that remote participation policy that we had considered, you know, what feels like ages ago, while we're still under either the emergency declaration or under the regulations of the implementer, just so that we can start developing that? Just from my personal perspective, I think some legislators in some towns and even, you know, private industry kind of saw that Zoom and this usage we're kind of jumping 5 years into the future right now with the pandemic in terms of the use of Zoom and other digital formats for local government. And I think it would be incumbent upon us to perhaps maybe be a little bit better prepared than other towns in the event the state maybe requires some form of hybrid technology usage. If this, you know, extension in the implementer is maybe a signal they're going to circle back on this and want more strict mandates to municipalities. So that's just one concern I have.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that we didn't do the remote policy, because I think it would have been blown out of the water with what we had originally drafted. I think basically the implementer bill just became our remote policy, you know, because it kind of gets into all the different ways that people can legally participate now, you know, virtually. I mean, certainly once the dust settles, and maybe give it a few weeks, but maybe we can bring this back onto council's radar. I did look at the draft policy as part of my notes earlier this evening, and we had all sorts of things that were in there. In fact, one of the things that I crossed out after having learned the answer to this is that we were saying the remote policy was going to pertain to all town boards, and now I know that we can't do that because the charter doesn't allow that. So even then, with the remote policy, it would just be for council.
Okay.
It wouldn't be for all town boards.
Each board would have to decide for themselves.
Yes,
yeah.
Per the attorney's opinion, yes.
No, that's good to know, because it just does seem like it's an important aspect, and it does seem like there are a lot of people that have enjoyed being able to participate remotely if they can as members of the public, as well as some elected officials. You know, I think even pre-pandemic, if I'm remembering correctly, you know, we had people that were traveling out of state and had the executive session that they were able to call in. So we set up a phone in the council chambers. So we've made some prior accommodations. So it seems like this kind of just expands it and perhaps modernizes it. So those are my questions for now. If I have any more, I'll circle back, but I think that might cover it for the time being.
So you took two of my three, great minds and all.
Great minds think alike, right?
Yeah, I know, right? So let's see, the question that I have remaining that Steve did not ask was if we have, okay, so the whole purpose behind having somebody be able to say, I want accommodations, I want to be able to attend this meeting in town hall, but in another room, not in the same room as everybody else. What if we have multiple people who ask for that?
So I want to make sure we're not getting confused. If it's if a board, the only time you have a member of the public go into a room by themselves would be if it's a fully remote meeting that they're attending. So it's not that there a meetings going on in the chambers and they want to go to the conference room. That's not what we're talking about. But what you bring up is a good point, though, is if you have multiple board meetings going on remotely in a given evening, and now you've got to have two independent rooms, potentially, maybe not, unless they're wearing headphones and they can listen to their own meetings, but you would potentially have to have almost like a proctor in the room keeping an eye on the people that are participating remotely, and they may be done at different times if there's two independent boards that are meeting simultaneously. So you raise a good point there where I didn't think that, we have 2-3 board meetings going on a given night, sometimes even 4, but there might be an opportunity where there's 2 remote meetings simultaneously happening, and you have 2 independent members of the public, or, I don't know, well, 2 independent members of the public that both want to participate in town hall. And then you'd have to have either 2 rooms or 1 room with 1 proctor and have 2 laptops. And so that one could do one and one could do the other.
My concern was, I'm trying to think this through, as if somebody who's asking for accommodations to be able to have something there, if they're not going to want to sit in a room with somebody else, like, so say meeting. So say, same meeting, there's 2 people that want remote accommodations, but they don't want to sit with the same, sit with somebody else in the room, because then they're meeting in person with somebody else. So at that point, would we have to provide multiple rooms in town hall if it's requested? And this was a question that I didn't get answered, but I'm sorry to ask you why, because I don't think you can answer it either. But I think potentially, if you had 3 people call in and say, okay, say it's a joint meeting. It's a joint town council board of ed meeting, and we're doing it fully remote, and we have 3 people that say, I need accommodations. So do we have to provide 3 separate rooms with 3 separate setups for those 3 people because they don't want to be in the room with somebody else? That's my.
I don't know. I
don't know how we control this, I guess, is the problem. Like we can't limit how many people can ask for special accommodation. So,
let me take that back. I'm rereading the bill number right now, and it's in line 7035. It's section B. Any public agency that conducts a meeting other than an executive session or special meeting solely by means of electronic equipment shall provide any member of the public upon written request, not less than 24 hours prior to such meeting, with a physical location and any electronic equipment necessary to attend such meeting in real time. So I think we have the ability to say, if you want to come in person, here's where it's happening. Here's the conference room. We'll get you a computer or whatever. And if 2 people can't be in the same room together, then perhaps I don't think that there's a need to have a second room. I think that we give the town's accommodating them, they're providing them a room to do their business. And if for some reason they don't want to be together, then I don't think that we need to extend that to a second room, because now we're talking about having a second person or.
Exactly.
That's not my, I'm not, Rick and I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I know Rick is, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but I don't see it that way. I don't know if maybe the onus is sort of on the resident to, okay, well, there's many ways you can participate in a meeting. And if you really want to do the town hall option, then I think there's should be ability to have 2 people in the same room watching either on the same computer or spaced out and have 2 computers. And so that way there's no distancing issues.
So I'll throw one more wrench into the works. In our office, when we've been on Zoom meetings and we've had 2 or more lawyers in the office participate in the meetings, and they bring their either laptops or iPads, they can't have the laptop and the iPad in the same physical room. It won't work with one another.
They get the feedback and that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't have, you'd have to have some listening devices.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it is a nightmare. Not well thought out legislation. Okay. Sophia. Sophia?
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. I was just wondering, and I have to say it. You're so right, Tammy. It doesn't seem that there might have been a couple of different oversights in drafting, 800 pages of legislation, but I'm just going to try to see if we can keep it simple. Can a conference bridge be provided? Providing a conference bridge, could that be considered a reasonable accommodation? So they could just go on their cell phone or their rotary phone or whatever you have and dial in and then be able to participate in a meeting during live time without having to come to town hall. Because I would think that if you want to come to town hall to participate, then it should be considered under the guise of an in-person meeting. And if you don't want to be, exposed to other people, then couldn't we just give you a conference number that you could just dial in? Like, would that be a reasonable accommodation that we can invest in just with, I guess, GoToMeeting or Conference Bridge or any type of software that would allow us to set up a conference call where the public could participate remotely or hybrid? Well, remotely.
So I think, Sophia, that's the point of the remote or the hybrid option, that similar to tonight's agenda, where there is a telephone number that you could dial in if you have an old school phone or whatever. That will always be an option for hybrid or remote. The accommodation, though, that they're talking about as part of the implementer bill in that line 7035 that I just read is if you, regardless of whether or not you have a phone or an iPad at home, and you want to come in and you want a physical meeting location at, I'm using town hall, but it would be any town facility. That's specifically called out in the legislation here, that it's a physical location and any electronic equipment necessary to attend such meeting in real time. So it says electronic equipment. If you put a phone, well, a lot of our rooms do have phones in them, so that's okay. But I don't know if the word electronic specifically is referring to the Zoom aspect of it.
Yeah, they need to strike that out. That seems just too cumbersome to reasonably accommodate. You see what I mean? Like a reasonable accommodation would mean that we wouldn't have to expend, thousands of dollars in order to create that reasonable accommodation. The most reasonable thing to do would say, well, if you can make it in public, we're more than happy to have you. But if you want to be able to, do things remotely, then the least that we can do is provide you a conference bridge so that you can dial in. So I don't know if with this implementer bill, is it a strict adherence that we would have to, go by, or is it something where we can just, establish what works for us within providing a reasonable accommodation?
The only option we have is picking one of the three. It is all a shall and not a may.
That's sad. Okay. Thank you so very much.
Madam Chair, may I throw one other idea in?
Go right ahead, Rick.
So another possibility, trying to think outside the box, is the physical location could be the person's house and somebody could bring them an iPad.
I guess that's a good point, Rick. I'm just thinking, does that mean the staff member has to sit there in their house now?
Rick's volunteering his iPad.
Oh, absolutely not.
Well, maybe there can be like a sign out program where if you wanted the piece of technology, you have to sign it out and maybe provide some assurance that you're not going to damage it or something. I don't know. We probably would need to see the insurance angle of that, but that's a nice idea.
Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I have a comment first, just something to just consider, at least my thoughts, in terms of if we were going to outfit rooms. It seems like the lean would be to try and do at least two, with one being on the second floor and one being the library program room, which I think would be reasonable. I know in the very least the foundation, which is reportable to the council, extended their Zoom subscription for another year to help to assist the library for their programs and for their meetings. So obviously it's their decision what they choose, but they have that option that through their own Zoom account to maintain meetings, and there won't be any double dipping on the Zoom accounts. And then this is a much bigger conversation, but in regards to renting out equipment, the library also does currently rent out both internet opportunities for, basically you can rent out a wireless internet system for a period of time through the library, as well as they do rent out, I believe, Nooks and other technologies. So they would be potentially a resource, if that's even viable, to rent out technology for people to use at their homes to participate remotely. They might be able to have some policies and procedures in place for that rental process and liability and such. So just a couple of thoughts.
Thank you, Steve. Brenda.
You did it to me again. You moved me before I hit the unmute button. I just want to make an observation that there are many families that have laptops over the summer right now because their students are home. And they will have the laptops through the year. Now, obviously, that is not a acceptable use at the moment for the parent to use that technology for themselves. It's only for the student. But there obviously is a procedure in place for residents of our town to be using equipment owned by the town through the Board of Ed. So I'm sure that there are some avenues that we can learn from the Board of Ed and from the best practices that they have in place for that. And thank you, Steve, for bringing up the library. I had forgotten about all of that. So that is awesome. We do have to be cognizant, I think, that if the option comes up that we are offering to residents, that we do need to make accommodations if someone is hearing impaired or has a hearing impairment, or if someone has a visual impairment and they are coming in to use our equipment. I believe we might have to address that too. So just something to put in the back of our minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Kurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, I mean, since a couple people talked about the library here, is there any possibility of using the computers at the library, having that as an use that as our location for members of the public who wish to attend meetings in person? I mean, I don't know how that would work with staffing and all that, but I mean, that stuff's there. So I don't know. That's just my question.
Yeah, well, that's actually not a bad idea because they could also handle reservations. They could handle, the 24-hour, I need to reserve a computer for a meeting. Mike?
Yeah, I think I have two counterpoints to that. One is that the library closes at 8 p.m. and many of our meetings go past 8 o'clock. Not just us, but other organizations. The other issue is that so the way the implementer bill reads is that there has to, if your agenda has public comment, then the person also needs to be able to talk. So I don't know, A, can you have people talking in the library, which I don't know, Barbara would appreciate that. But B, do those have webcams and microphones so that they can communicate? So I don't know that that's although I did think of that too, Kurt, but I don't think that that's necessarily the answer. I think it's too bad because those computers are there. I know what you're saying. There's that bank of them right there. But I think
you buy USB webcams and microphones pretty cheap. So
yeah, I guess if it'd be more about having people talking and listening and the volume on. Plus, I don't know if there's a time limit on the laptop on those computers too. But if we're looking for, we're brainstorming here, so it's certainly worth looking into.
Steve?
Just to chime in with some of the brainstorming, I do believe, you probably have to clarify with Barbara, but I believe a lot of those computers do actually automatically shut down towards the end of the day, that they kind of have like this auto shutdown for the night. That's where I think the program room would be a more ideal dedicated spot. I think when we used it, I think in early 2020, pre-pandemic, we were able to lock up the various rooms around the library, but left the restroom facilities accessible so they would be able to lock out people from wandering into the library after it closes, but still have that accessible space and an exit that's safe and accessible to the town hall parking lot area. So I think that would probably be the most ideal situation. And then in terms of finding the equipment to set up in there would be the other hurdle in terms of providing laptops or whatever technology with a camera and microphone to sit in that space.
All good points. So I'm not sure how we want to go about this next. I hear a lot of concern and issues with the full remote option. I think that opens us up to a lot of possible expense, technology issues, staffing issues, doing the whole outfitting the rooms and everything else. At least that's what I'm hearing from everybody. So if everybody agrees on that, I'm wondering, do we want to quickly say, do we want to eliminate the full remote option? Steve?
I was just going to suggest whether we should do a straw poll on each option, or if we should only doing a straw poll on whether or not we prefer one of the three. I don't know what your thoughts would be on that. If we should do a straw poll solely on, do we want fully remote, and then everybody vote? Do we do a single vote on do we want hybrid? And then third, do we want to do a vote on all in person, and then kind of delineate from there what seems to be the most reasonable compromise?
I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it at this point. There's three options. They're all like, I think we have to, let's, so let's see.
Is there a way for us to see the documents that Mr. Rosen has been working on? We're doing this all, spoken word instead of written word. And I am one of those people, and I'm sure I've heard you say it before, Ms. Nuccio, that it's easier to see something and read it and contemplate over it.
Brenda, you haven't read the 800 and something page implementer bill yet?
I actually printed out sections of it because I
portions, right? Because it's a ream of paper.
I did not have the benefit of hearing the thoughts of our town attorney and our town manager and how they felt it was going. There's a lot here to digest.
There is.
And to have the short discussion we did and not have like almost a tally sheet in front of us on the pros and cons of everything, it's hard to make a decision at this point for me.
Okay, so I totally respect that because I think there are a lot of ins and outs with this. There's a lot to consider between all of the options. I know Mr. Regan is not here tonight also. So trying to think what the best option would be here. Maybe we could, Mike, how about we give an initial right now idea of what everybody's kind of thinking their option might be in regard to what Steve was saying, like a quick straw poll, but we're not going to make a decision tonight. Maybe you can pull together the list of pros and cons for all of the three options for us. We could kind of have that to look at, mull over, and maybe we can make a decision on the first meeting in July. Would that be something that everybody would be in favor of? That's our first straw poll for the night. Is everybody in favor of that option?
Madam Chair, if I may, that one of the questions always, if we wait till July 1st and we're fully remote, does that mean we have to provide that accommodation room?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
We would. So here's my only concern. On a personal level, I am having surgery next Monday, and I am going to be out of commission for a few days. That gets from June 28th to June 30th. So short of us meeting again this week, a special meeting by the end of this week, I would not be able to be part of that meeting. Surgery was scheduled around all of the meetings and such. So if we were to meet again, I don't know what the possibility is for everybody to meet again by the end of the week. That might be a little too.
Yeah, it'd have to be Thursday because we have to post the agenda for a special. So it has to be Thursday.
Right. We would have to decide that now, post an agenda tomorrow. for the special meeting and have a meeting on Thursday. So, Brenda, what can we screen share? What do you, how do we want to, can we create a pros and cons list?
I have my memo. I'm going to send it out to everybody after this.
Awesome. Then can you send out your memo and maybe we move the vote for this to the end of the other items we have? I don't know. I mean, it's not like I could split my brain and pay attention to the meeting and make a decision on the pros and cons at the same time.
I understand.
You know, and I want to be clear that, you know, this is no fault of Mr. Rosen or anybody else. This is just the timing of when all this information came out. You know, I don't find fault with anybody for not being able to provide a packet on this. But I also feel that the information in the packet that was given to the residents and that they wrote in on and gave their input on, because this does impact them, is different than what is being presented tonight. And we received emails from a number of people who are not on, so they have no idea that, you know, the procedures may change, you know?
Yeah. Mike, I don't know the memo that you have, is that something that we could greet and share? Would that be helpful?
I can certainly, it's more in draft form, but I can, if you want, I can put it up, but I was going to draft an email and send it to everybody on council. If you're going to take this up on Thursday, then maybe it's best to do that then. I don't know how you want to do it.
Okay. Let me clear out the questions that people have right now, and then we can decide. Steve?
I think Councilor Lou might have covered mine a little bit, but yeah, I was just looking back at the agenda item. Our only action desired was discussion, and there wasn't really an intention to make a decision tonight, but it does seem that there's a little bit of urgency. And I guess my personal opinion is that if we're not making a decision tonight, and if there's going to be too many conflicts, it does seem like fully remote, at least for the next July meeting, might be the best option while we deliberate the various pros and cons of the hybrid or fully in-person options for consideration. That's just my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. Lou?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur fully with Mr. Jones. I think this is something where, you know, although I would like to make a decision on this, I think it's something where, given the information that we have and just some of the issues that we put this off until we take a straw poll, at least to see where our leanings are, so that Mr. Rosen could focus his efforts on that, and then put off the final vote as far as how we're going to do things and how we want to proceed forward for the July meeting. Because I think it's something that I had trying to push in a special meeting at within the next few days is something that I think would be futile. Thank you.
Okay. So I've just come up with an option. Instead of a straw poll, I'm going to go around and I'm going to have you rate in-person, hybrid, and remote as top, middle, least favorite. That will at least give us kind of a, just right now, as you're thinking about it, not a full decision, but just kind of, if you had the preference, 1, 2, 3, what would it be? Brendan, you're making a face. I'm assuming you don't want me to start with you first.
No, I got that tickle going on again. If you want to go with me first, I think we haven't fully discussed all of the drawbacks to a full in-person. I think there's going to be just as many as if we do fully remote. So I think in-person actually is my least favorite option right now. Fully remote is my preference because I actually think that we're going to have the least amount of people asking for accommodations because we haven't had anybody in the past year ask for something. And I guess hybrid, I don't know how I feel on that because I don't understand all the implications. I personally feel whenever a resident asks for an accommodation, the answer is always yes, and we take care of it.
Okay, so I have fully remote, hybrid, in person. Because hybrid you weren't sure on, so I stuck that in the middle. That work?
I'm considering that we're looking to invest, thousands of dollars into a provision that's only, anticipated to last until next April, I would say that my preference would be hybrid, in person, and not remote at all, but we'll just leave remote for my third.
Okay. Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like that you're using the ranked choice voting method. I know New York is doing that tonight.
You emailed me about it enough.
I know. I guess my initial leaning, based on what I've been gathering tonight, would be the hybrid would be my primary choice. I guess probably in person would be second, and a very close third is the fully remote. I think there's still some information that's needed delineating kind of the pros and cons, but it seems like there's some very tight pros and cons for either fully in person or fully remote. And I think personally, while we are under this through next April, I just would again say that it seems as though there might be some signals from the state that they may be trying to consider mandates or some changes that make us kind of jump forward into the, with this pandemic, we've jumped 5 years into the future with the use of this technology for town business. And I think it might be here to stay for the foreseeable future, even as universities and private industries are starting to use more digital options for their meetings and conducting business. I think it would be incumbent upon us to consider the same.
Thank you. Lou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My rank would be hybrid, in-person, remote. Thank you.
Kurt.
Yeah, I'm going to go hybrid, in person, then remote. And also, I think we need to have a discussion to have Mike outfit 2 more rooms with the owl camera and computer and TV screen, or what needs to be done. I think we should have that discussion now, because I'm sure we're not the only group that's going to be or considering hybrid.
Yeah, I think across the board, that's going to be happening in every town right now. And Mike, my request would be, and honestly, I'm even sorry for asking this, because like I said, I couldn't get this definitively from anybody at the Capitol, and I don't know, Rick, I honestly feel horrible asking this, but I want to make sure that if we go with a hybrid option, that we do not have the same equipment obligations that we would for a fully remote.
So the only time that a member of the public can submit a written request more than 24 hours is if the meeting is solely by means of electronic equipment. So if you have a hybrid, you don't have to deal with that issue.
Okay. All right. So for me, then, I would say I have questions around how a hybrid meeting is going to work for us in terms of if it's the owl camera, in terms of recording, like we had mentioned, if 5 of us are in person and 2 of us are remote, do we have Lisa in the room videotaping, and we have Zoom option videotaping, so we have 2 separate videotapings, and then we have how does that get posted, and also as chair, handling the people in person and the people that are on Zoom when it comes to participation, letting people in and everything else. Is that going to be something that's going to be handled by the chairs? Or Mike, at one point you had mentioned something about possibly staff having to kind of handle the ins and outs of the electronic, how all that's going to work. If we have the owl and we have the agenda to put up, we're going to have that on the TV. Where are we going to have the computer part on the TV? How is the computer going to see what's on the TV? I think there's still a lot of logistics around the hybrid model that we need to kind of work through and figure out how we administer a meeting in a hybrid fashion. So I do have some concerns about trying to logistically manage that. But I think probably at this point, hybrid would probably meet the best need. I'm literally doing this as I'm going. I have so many questions, and I was there when we were talking about this, so I can't even imagine the rest of the people who weren't. And I would say in person would be my second, and fully remote would be my last. That I think is kind of where my head is right now. But as I said, I still have a lot of logistical questions around how a hybrid model is going to work from an administrative perspective. And there's going to be kinks that we're going to have to kind of fumble through. So I can send you that. Well, you'll get that straw poll information in the minutes, Mike. But I think right now the majority is looking at the order of operations being hybrid, in person, and the last being fully remote. Brenda.
Yes, can I be so bold as to make a request of Mr. Rosen that since our next meeting is going to be remote, that he possibly consider joining the remote meeting from the council chambers using the OWL?
Yeah, I could do that. That would be for the July 13th meeting, or are we talking? Okay.
Maybe that would give us all a sense of how it would go, and maybe it would clue you into where some kinks are in the system if we, if that is part of our solution.
Would it be beneficial if I did that too, Mike? Like if there's two of us in the room so we can see the owl actually working and spinning?
I thought of that, but I didn't know if that made us as a hybrid then, and then, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm wondering because technically I would still be, well, I guess I'd technically be calling into the Zoom. We wouldn't have anything.
Two of you would be using the same device. So that's where I got nervous requesting two people doing it.
Yeah. Or Mike.
I'm fine with that. If you do a remote meeting and then that way you're all remote and I'm just remoting in from the chambers, that's fine.
Yeah. We can see how that's going to work with the board and such, at least to kind of get a trial run. Okay.
I appreciate it, Mr. Rosen. Thank you.
Steve.
I was going to chime in too with, I know we're going to cross that bridge when we get to that point, but if we do need dual individuals to cover the room and Zoom, obviously the co-chair and co-chair committee, you could read the room and I'd be kind of the Zoom admin with, Mike as a co-host in case there's some issue where I'm asking a question, suddenly somebody pops in. It's kind of like how it is now that, there's at least 2 or 3 people that are Zoom moderators of some sort that could manage that influx and outflux.
We're going to have to increase your pay for that, Steve.
For the mileage,
that's really not a bad idea between, chair and vice chair for somebody to be monitoring the Zoom piece of it and somebody to be handling the, in-person piece of it.
Yeah, because I think at least for a hybrid notion, once we get to that point, if there are multiple counselors, I think the room would be managing, acknowledging when people raise their hand and working with the vice chair to know, okay, well, did this person raise their hand virtually before that person raised their hand in the room? And then it might be better if someone's in the room to be managing people who speak in person for public participation, and then managing that between if we did allow for remote participation.
So I think you just presented me with another kink.
Yeah.
Say I decide I'm going to take the meeting from home today. I just had surgery. I'm not fully recovered. I'm not going to come into the council chambers in July. And I'm going to stay home and do that. And you're going to be in the chambers with 3 other people. And then, a couple of us are remotely. And I am trying to run the meeting from the Zoom perspective. How would I know who in the room wanted to speak? They wouldn't be able to raise a blue hand.
It would probably be a lot more communication between us, just saying, Vice Chair Jones, do you see anyone in the room that's looking to be recognized, and vice versa? I'd probably go back to you and say, is there anybody on Zoom looking to be recognized at this time, and create some sort of order. And also, I think just the general, I would say golden rule, but allowing everyone to speak once before we go back into a second round in terms of, giving that pause of time for people to engage and have a chance to speak before we start having one person or two people go back and forth several times.
Yeah, I think we'd have to definitely, we're going to have to come up with something, yeah, because we obviously, you can't we have to communicate publicly, you know, who's in the room, who's going to handle the room, basically. Yeah. We need to kind of have who's going to handle the room and who's going to handle the electronic piece. Okay. So, do you know sign language, Steve? I do. We can have hand signals.
I know someone that can't.
It's a very valuable tool. You should learn.
It is.
All right. So, Mike, do you think you have enough right now?
Well, I think we need
together like a pros and cons list for us to review, an idea of where we're kind of heading as a council right now before we have to make a final decision.
I mean, I don't know if the pros and cons list would be much different than the memo I emailed you all that I read earlier today, but I think we still need to make decision on whether you would like me to start the procurement of two more sets of room outfitting, and then also, was there going to be a special meeting this week, or are we just going to wait till July at this point?
I think the majority of the council has fully remote as their last option. So I would think, with that being said, the opinion would be to not start securing equipment that there doesn't seem to be the support for just a fully remote option. That's my opinion on this based on the straw poll that we took. And
But the in-person or hybrid will require technology. It's going to require the OWL TV and laptop.
And we already have the OWL and the TV.
Right. Yes, for one room, for one room in town hall. There's
right. So I thought only the fully remote we have to provide accommodations for.
No, hybrid or in person with a person participating remotely will still require the TV, the laptop, and the OWL camera, because the OWL camera integrates with what's going on in the room. So if you have anybody participating remotely, then that's the setup you need. The whole thing with the remote only, that was if you had people coming to the room to view the meeting on a computer or an iPad or a telephone. So the hybrid option does require technological upgrades to two of the rooms.
And the other boards and commissions haven't made their decisions yet, so we don't know what they're going to choose. We could have all three options in play.
Mike, can we encumber, Lisa, it's probably, Mike or Lisa, can we possibly encumber what we think? And then, because we're not going to have those decisions from all the boards by June 30th. So the concern at this point is how would we give you marching orders to go and procure the information, procure the devices when we don't have the feedback from the other areas. And I guess I'm a little confused now, because I thought we just spent all this time saying that the fully remote option, people can request a room in the computer. If it's hybrid or in person, they cannot. And we already have one OWL, right, for the council chamber. So if town council went with hybrid or in person, we don't need any other equipment. Hybrid, we need the OWL, which we already have. We wouldn't need it for a second room because it's just the one. That's just town council. That's not talking about the other boards and commissions.
Correct. I think I'm following you. Yes. So in person would just be in person like the old days. And the only difference would be if there's a counselor who requests an accommodation, we would have to quickly flip to having that technology ready to put on pretty much with, then that's one thing too, as I mentioned earlier, in the implementer bill, it doesn't stipulate a time frame like it does with the remote meeting of a 24-hour ahead of time cutoff. So we would have to maybe in-house come up with a policy about that. So maybe the same 24 hours or something like that, so that way we can know that we need to do the OWL camera and the laptop and everything.
Right. So I guess the question is then, can we encumber with a clear intent that we may not use it, and we'll release that encumbrance within within the first month, just to cover the bases, so that we can use money that's available. Lisa's smiling, I'm thinking, I'm accruing stuff, she's encumbering, or we're using the same words, different things, but she's laughing at me now, so.
Usually when you encumber something, it's for something you have a commitment for. Yes, you could put an encumbrance in place, maybe, but usually you have something ordered already when you put one in place. But if you do encumber the funds to the company that provides the owl or whatever and not place the order, it's not really appropriate, but it has been done in the past.
We can release the encumbrance.
Oh, yeah.
And the concern is the state has put us in a bind right now. They really put us in a bind. And I just don't know that we're going to be able to get this decision from.
No, I mean, that's the hard part.
Like, what do we have? Like, honestly, like 20 boards and commissions in total between everything, everybody?
Probably more.
So there's no way I see this happening in 8 days with public meetings, because it has to all be done publicly. So I think with that rock in a hard place, if the option is there to encumber the value of 3 rooms outfitting, and everybody decides to not do fully remote, then we release the encumbrance. If we have one board that decides to do it, then we only utilize 1 room's worth of the encumbered value and release the rest. I want to be able to use the money that's available this year without it tapping into the budget next year. And honestly, I would like to also pursue it being ARPA money, but I just don't want to get us in a bind where we're hitting next year's budget with what could potentially, if you're talking 3 rooms, it could potentially be almost $10,000.
We really don't have those kind of extra funds hanging around.
Exactly. We don't. Not on the budget side, on the town side of the house. We don't have 10 grand just sitting around to cherry pick from.
No. And the other issue is the owl cameras have been on back order.
Yep.
So I just don't know how quickly we'd be able to get one to begin with. So that's something it could take a couple months to get. So, it all depends on what's going to happen with the other committees and commissions. And if we only have 1 owl to work with and somebody, decides to do it a hybrid the same way, then the best thing to do is just make sure they don't schedule it on the same night so they can use the 1 room we have until we can get any other equipment.
Yep. We're going to have to be tight on the scheduling of the council chambers.
And there are also 169 towns that are all having this conversation right now. So that's why I'm worried about the availability of these technologies before they fly off the shelf. They probably already are. So that's why, maybe can you all maybe give me a straw poll commitment of at least 1 room that we can procure with this year's money? I think that would at least get us a backup room to the chambers.
We can go around and ask everybody that. I'll wait till everybody else chimes in for my opinion on that. Brenda?
Yes.
Get us to 1 room. Sophia?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Trying to write all this down. I think it's safe to do 1 room, if for no other reason than if we have even more than 1 person do hybrid, having that available to stick someplace else if we have to. So I would say definitely go ahead with the ordering of 1 room's worth of stuff. And Lisa, if we can possibly encumber the other 2 rooms till we get something more definitive from the other committees.
We can do
that's
that.
probably our best option.
We'll take care of that.
Well, technically, you have a commitment, so you could encumber all 3, place the order, wait for the backlog, release the other 2 if we don't need them. Gap policy.
This meeting's being recorded, so.
It would technically, again, it's a commitment. So,
The town council can, put a vote on it if you'd like to say that's what you'd like us to do. And, you're the top notch there, so.
All right. So do you have what you need right now, Mike?
Yes, and then just again, we will be reconvening. I don't think we talked about having a special meeting again. So maybe July 13th is going to be our next meeting. Then is that accurate?
I think that's the case. Yes. I think you've got at least enough of a direction right now. Yes, to commitment for partial outfitting, and after we read the memo that you sent out, any questions that we have, we'll bring to the next meeting to discuss, and we can make the final decision for the first meeting in July.
Okay.
And as I mentioned in the beginning, let's please get this information out to every board and commission that they need to have some sort of meeting to discuss this before the first meeting in July, if possible. Steve?
Okay, sounds good.
I'm just raising my hand to be recognized, but I was going to say I did a quick count, and I believe it's about 27 different boards and commissions, though some of them are very specific and only meet on really specific occasions, if at all. So I think probably the 20 to 25 is still a rough estimate of what's active on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah.
Between elected and appointed.
I knew it was in the 20s. Thank you. Thank you for the count. I appreciate that. All right. I think we're going to move on now. 8.4, consideration of a resolution appropriate $140,000 for certain school patio entrance and bus parking lot pavement improvements, appropriating $151,800 for certain parking lot pavement improvements, and appropriating $434,029 for heavy machinery and equipment acquisition, and authorizing the issuance of up to $725,829 bonds and notes to finance the appropriations and the setting of a public hearing thereon for July 13th, 2021. So that last part is the important part. We are basically just setting a public hearing to discuss the capital projects that we already have approved in the capital budget and allocation of the funds, correct?
Exactly.
We can blow through this one quick. Does anybody have any questions on that? Not seeing any. Steve?
Steve Jones, I make a motion that be it resolved by the Tolland Town Council that that the following resolution be introduced and set down for public hearing on July 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via Zoom, remote, or in-person meeting in the 6th floor of the Town Council chambers.
Sophia Johnson, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. 8.5, appointments to various vacancies on municipal boards and commissions.
Just as a point of order, I'm sorry, on the last item that just passed, there was the thing where it said via a Zoom remote or an in-person meeting.
Yeah, it just.
I think we need to narrow that down to one or the other. So if the first meeting we said a moment ago, the July meeting is going to be a remote meeting, I think you should revise that motion to just be the Zoom remote meeting so that we can advertise the public hearing properly.
Okay. So it should be just Zoom, because that's what we're meeting for July 13th.
Should we strike that previous vote and then just set a new motion, or amend the prior motion and do a new vote?
I think we would amend the prior motion and do a new vote.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd amend the motion that was made to be via Zoom remote only.
Sophia Johnson, second.
Any other discussion? Not seeing any. Brenda?
Yes.
Sophia?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I am an aye, so that is unanimous.
Thank you for clearing that up. I just don't want somebody to be misinformed about where the public hearing is taking place. So, but I will be in the 6th floor chambers that night to participate in that meeting.
You will be, yes.
So this for vacancies tonight, we actually retailored the chart a little bit, and so it looks a little bit different than we normally do. And this would really only happen where we listed out the upcoming vacancies. Is because there are 2 members who are leaving their appointments prior to the end of their term, but also right now it's June 22nd, so their term isn't up yet until June 30th. So that's why it says upcoming vacancies. So for this evening, the Tolland Housing Authority is going to have 2 vacancies as of June 30th. Carolyn McLeod and Fran Maynard. Fran is coming off of the Housing Authority, after many years of service, and so we listed that position. 7/1/21 is when that term was supposed to be reappointed, but because it's still prior to 7/1/21, that's why it's an upcoming vacancy. The other person was actually midterm. Their term isn't up until 2024, so they have several years left on their term. So they're leaving early. And then there's also on Agriculture Commission a similar situation where Sarah is that position is due up to be appointed later in July 9th. So technically the term isn't up yet until that date hits July 9th. And then Linda Palmer, who was an alternate, is also coming off of that board. So what we did when we created this is those positions, if you go to the bottom of the page, we're talking about who's going to replace whom in that list. So Janet Moore is going to be going on to Housing Authority to take over for Fran's term. Rudy Fiorello is going to be taking over for Carolyn's term, and Stephen Bassett on Agriculture Commission is moving from an alternate to take the member's position. They're both the same term, so it's going to be the position that Sarah is vacating, and will therefore have 2 agriculture alternates. So at the end of the day, sorry for the long-winded, just in case, because if you're wondering why it looks different, the actual appointments are of Janet, Rudy, and Stephen, but we wanted to show you who they're taking over, whose terms they're taking over for. So I guess, and the other thing that's on the sheet tonight is that the Technology Advisory Board, although they seldom meet, only if there's an issue like an ad hoc committee, they only meet when they're needed, but their terms were technically up as of May 28th. And so we do need to reappoint all the members on Technology Advisory Board. So that's kind of the background on this item.
All right. So, sorry to interject, Madam Chair. I was going to do the reappointments as one motion and the appointments as a second, just to have 2 separate votes, if that's okay with the rest of the council.
Yep.
All right. So Steve Jones, I'd make a motion to approve the following reappointments to the Technology Advisory Board: George Eckebert, Robert Powell, Kyle Daigle, John Livingston, Manuel Medeiros, and Mike Martell for a term of 5/28/21 to 5/28/23.
This is Brenda Flusy, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
A very thankful aye.
Sophia?
Congratulations, aye.
Steve?
Just aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so that is unanimous. Thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
All right. Steve Jones, I would also make a motion that we approve the appointments as laid out in the packet for the Tolland Housing Authority: Janet Moore for 7/1/21 to 6/30/26, and Rudy Fiorello for a term of 7/1/19 through 6/30/24. And in addition, approve the appointment of Stephen Bassett for a term of 7/9/21 to 7/9/24 for the Agriculture Commission.
This is Brenda Flusy, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Again, a grateful thank you.
Sophia?
In favor?
Steve?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. That gets us to old business 9.1, consideration of a resolution to adopt a proclamation policy.
Okay.
Mike?
Hi. Yes. Hi, Mike Rosen, Town Manager. So this is the third time this item has been on our agenda now. At the last meeting on June 8th, there was further discussion that took place on what proclamation policy might look like, because we don't have one on the books right now. We just have a process in place for when people request a proclamation of the council. So what I did was, at that meeting on June 8th, I took notes, and what's before you tonight in the packet, starting on page 27 of tonight's packet, is the amended, updated proclamation policy. A couple of changes after having listened to what everybody was saying at the last meeting. I cleaned up a little bit of the numbering on here, so it reads a little bit better. I also moved up. Somebody had asked for the presidential proclamation bullet to go up higher into the memo, so now it's the third paragraph about presidential proclamations. We also, when I put this draft together, I think I'm trying to see if there was a question about the FOIA, to having a chair and a vice chair do sort of like a 2-member vetting of proclamations. And I did speak with the town attorney about that. I think perhaps Councilor Luba had asked for that. And what Rick had come back with was that similar to how Mr. Luba and Mr. Jones get together to vet candidates for town boards and town commissions that are responsible to the town council, what they do is when they conduct a screening, and then they ultimately make a recommendation to the overall town council, which is the entity that actually takes action on the recommendation. So in line with that, we changed the proclamation review process, which was bullet number 3 on this draft. And so what it allows for is that the chair and the vice chair, or 2 sitting town council members as otherwise designated, will conduct a screening of all proclamation requests to determine if a request is appropriate to be placed on the agenda for consideration by the town council. And the only thing they can do is make a recommendation to the town council regarding action on the proclamation request. That 2-member body does not have the bandwidth or ability, without doing it in a public meeting, to reject a proclamation request, because that would be acting on behalf of the overall council. All this 2-member board subcommittee would do would be to make a recommendation to the overall council at their next available meeting, similar to how the whole vetting of candidates works. So one way around that would be, if you all agree, you could have a subcommittee that is doing public meetings, and then therefore they can make decisions one way or another on their own without having to go back to the full board, to the full council. But that's really up to you how we drafted this. But the way the language is drafted now complies with FOIA regulations, and the town attorney agrees with the way that it's drafted right now. But as always, everything's up for discussion and further amendment at this time. I don't think there was any other major changes to this. I think otherwise everything was similar to the last draft that was submitted for the June 8th meeting. So that's my background.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the policy as it is in front of us right now? Lou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just so I'm clear regarding the review that Mr. Rosen and Rick did, so that basically that it's not something where if a proclamation request is submitted under provision 3, the review process, the review subcommittee or the screening committee would make its recommendation to the town council, but it's something that the town council will have to decide whether or not to put on the agenda or not. Is that correct? Or can they just say, look, this isn't something that's appropriate, therefore we're not bringing it forward?
Yes, the town attorney had said that this 2-person internal screening committee doesn't have the ability to reject or itself accept the validity of a proclamation request, that the way it still has to go before the full council for their vote. So that's in order to comply with FOIA. So if a proclamation request comes forward, the first people that would see the request would be the 2-person subcommittee, and they would say, gee, I'd like to recommend that this, I'd like this to go to the town council agenda for recommendation for approval. Or they could say, I don't think this is appropriate. I'm going to recommend to town council that this doesn't belong on as a proclamation. But either way, it goes on to a council agenda for the council's decision on it. So that's what Rick had said. The only way around that whole thing that I just said was if the 2-member board, instead of doing their discussions outside of FOIA, if they want to have more power and the council is willing to delegate that authority to that 2-member board, then they would be a formal subcommittee of the council. Meetings would be public, agendas would be posted, and obviously that extends the whole length of the proclamation process, but then they would have the authority delegated by council to do that themselves. But as drafted right now, this is still complying with FOIA by not giving the final decision or of arbitrating to the 2-member board, but instead to the overall council. Very similar to how the candidate screening goes.
Okay. All right, because I think that sort of defeats the whole purpose of why I was asking that provision be added inside there. So, okay, I appreciate the input. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you.
At least at this point for questions.
Okay, you have the right to come back around. Brenda.
Yes, thank you. I had a question on number 3, the proclamation review process. It says that, the 2-person can be the town council chairperson and vice chairperson or 2 sitting council members. Then at the very bottom, it says if there is a disagreement between members conducting the review on placing a proclamation request on the agenda, the town council chairperson has the final discretion. Well, if it's a 2-person board and one of them is the chair, whatever the chair votes is the way it's going to go. So that second person is kind of ancillary to the whole procedure. It seems like, if I was chair and I decided I had to push this through, doesn't matter what you say, I have the final say, so I could go ahead and make it so. I just did a Star Trek reference.
Yeah, you did.
You know what I mean? So I'm concerned about that language for the future.
Yes. Technically, this is where I struggle with this section also, because technically the agenda is solely at the chair's discretion for everything. So this would be, at the end of the day, the agenda is solely at the discretion of the chair. So you make a valid point there. Steve.
No, that was the same point I was going to make, is that, it does seem at the end of the day that the chair has the discretion to make the full agenda and work with the town manager. So it seems like no matter what, that would be at the discretion of the chair. So.
Yeah. Lou.
This is my second go around. So, and my proposal would be then is that we just either eliminate section 3 altogether, or just say that with regard to the review process, that it's at the full discretion of the town council chair whether or not a proclamation is put on the agenda or not. I think that's because that way it makes it clear. Thank you.
I think I agree with you. I think at this point, since we're talking about placing something on an agenda, the agenda per charter is discretion of the chair. So if we make section 3, like that whole process, looking at it here, it's still discretionary. To assist in setting the agenda for future town council meetings, proclamation requests will be subject to the discretion of the chair and being placed on an agenda. I think we could just rework it, because like the screening part that could come out, make a recommendation, I think, again, that ends up for the town council to vote on. We could leave we'll work on with the town manager's office on drafting the language. I think that is something that you could still leave in there. And then you could take out the last part about the disagreement. So That would be my suggestion on it. Sophia?
Well, I was thinking that it could be perceived, that you have another person to bounce ideas off. So it would be one of those things where it's not an arbitrary decision, although ultimately.
I think we lost you, Sophia.
Yeah, I think
you're on mute.
Themselves for some reason.
She's on mute.
You might have cheeked your mute button again.
I'm going to go to Brenda. Oh, wait, nope, she's off mute.
Oh my gosh. Hello?
Are you there, Sophia?
Okay, I think I'm gone.
Now we can hear you much clearer.
Oh, you know what happened? My son was calling me. I'm so sorry. No, but I was just saying that I think that it's that it would if to consider it not to be arbitrary. You get what I mean? Like, because it would just at least give you an opportunity, or the chair an opportunity, to discuss the pros and cons of bringing something forth, and it not just because then you wouldn't want for the chair to be unfairly targeted to say, oh, well, you just made this decision on your own. If it's at least with two people, that it won't fall completely, or just be completely incumbent upon you to make that decision. I think that as a safety measure, just to make it so that there is no argument with saying that it's being arbitrary. So, I can go either way, because, the chair is there to be trusted to make these decisions. But I could just see how this could potentially be something where, if the chair should decide that they did not want to put forward a proclamation, then it would be open season to be able to say that, based on your opinion, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I do know that it's a provision that I have no argument with, but ultimately it would be the chair to decide what to move forward with.
Got you. Thank you. Brenda?
My point in bringing up this was to say that I think that it should not be just up to the chair. I know the chair has discretion over the agenda, but it makes it look like the entire proclamation process is just up to the chair. I would recommend that you have two people who are not the chair, or I would prefer three, actually, so that there's, more than just 2 points of view, and there could be a 2-to-1 vote. Hopefully they're all 3-0 votes, but then ultimately it can land on the chair. Otherwise, the chair is not only deciding the agenda, the chair also has the added responsibility of going ahead and doing the whole review, proclamation review process. It just seems to me that it would be better having some people make the recommendation, et cetera, outside. It go to the agenda decision-making group, and then make it onto the agenda at that point. That's how I would like to see the process go.
Okay, thank you. Sophia?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to know, would it be economically feasible to make it be like the attorney? Because then, if the attorney for the town, I'm not sure if it's the same way that it works with what I'm familiar with, but that's a legal advice, because for instance, if you have someone that wants to, bring forth or make a recommendation toward the town to acknowledge something that will be negatively perceived in a community, that's a huge burden to carry. So I'm just saying that, the people put the the person that sit on the council as their trusted person. So to say that to bring in 3 other people, the community didn't put those 3 other people in place. So I think that it is fair to take from the town council to bring forth that responsibility and helping to identify what would keep continuity and harmony within a community. So I just like I said again, if not 2 members of the, out of the town council, maybe the town council chair and then the attorney, because you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that would be illegal. So I don't know, like, I don't want us to have to bring this back to another agenda. I was hoping we could vote tonight, but now that the question is brought up, then we might need to just flesh out those minor details and then move on from there. But as everything else is perfect to me.
Okay. I don't know about the lawyer aspect of this. We could potentially be paying a lot of money for Rick to do that, and these are ceremonial only. They're not legally binding, so I'm not sure about the legal aspect of having the lawyer do it. Prior to all of this, the decision was made by the chair, because I know I brought stuff forward to Bill Eccles before, and he said no, but we'll have Steve do a citation or something like that. So.
Then I'm resolved then. You answered my question basically, so thank you.
Oh, no problem. So everything about the policy I like, with the exception of the review process, because ultimately the agenda is driven by the chair. That is how it works. A proclamation is discretionary, as this states, and it will be brought forward. I can't imagine, honestly, that, and that could be wrong, but, you know, at any point somebody's gonna, unless something is totally outlandish, that it wouldn't be brought forward. But my concern is creating a subcommittee, creating another public meeting, creating a whole nother process to review a proclamation, to bring it to the town council and get it on an agenda. It seems like we're just adding more and more complexity to this rather than just simplifying it. My preference would be if we keep section 3, taking out, changing the first part to just having it be decided by the town council chairperson, and removing A, I think. No, there would be no screening. I think B is good. I think C is good. And actually, I don't even know if we need to keep B. B is fine. We can keep it, but I think the whole thing is it's going to go on an agenda, and then everybody will discuss it and we'll vote on it and we'll go from there. And then I think the whole last paragraph can come out. That's my preference in this. I agree with Sophia in the sense that this has now been on 3 meetings. So if we can amend and decide and discuss and vote on it tonight, I think that would be preferable. Does anybody else have an opinion differing from that we haven't discussed or want to discuss, or do we want to do a vote on making those changes? Steve, I see you're unmuted. Do you have an opinion?
I was going to say I'm fine with moving forward with making a vote as amended once we get, if there's any other questions or comments from other counselors.
Okay.
Could you repeat the, Tammy, just, could you repeat the amendment, please? Just so I can.
The amendment would be the proclamation review process will be, this first sentence is fine. Consideration of proclamation requests are completely discretionary. To assist in setting agendas for future town council meetings, the review process will be conducted by the town council chairperson. And I think just leave it at that, town council chairperson. As part of this as part of the process, the chair will make recommendations to the town council regarding action on the proclamation request. We'll work with the town manager's office on drafting the language of a proclamation, and then remove that last paragraph about the disagreement.
Thank you.
Is that good? You got that?
Yes.
Okay. Then I would think that would be my as amended.
All right. If there's no other discussion, then I would make a motion that be it resolved by the Tolland Town Council that it hereby approves the proclamation policy as amended, approved by the Tolland Town Council on June 22nd, 2021.
Sophia Johnson, and I second.
Nope. Okay.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
No.
Sophia?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I am an aye, so that passes. Thank you, guys. That puts us up to, sorry, going back to the beginning of my agenda here. 10, report of the town manager.
Okay, hi everybody. Mike Rosen, town manager. I already covered one of the things I was going to talk about, which was the updated masking protocols at town hall, which at this, again, for anybody who may have joined late, if you're a vaccinated party, you do not need to wear your mask at town hall. If you are not vaccinated, we do require that you still wear your mask at town hall. So that went into effect this morning. I also wanted to just double back on the health district for a second at that meeting. The question had come up earlier about what that expense was. So that was a request for reimbursement for pandemic response expenses through our, through the member communities. And the total amount of they're looking to recoup is $20,405, and Tolland's share of that is $5,470. And they're doing it across, they're proposing the expense be split on a per capita basis among 9 member towns. So that's what the 5470 is going to pay for. The last thing I was going to mention, and try to keep it a little bit brief because of the hour here, but general reminder to residents, if you have a town issue, please let us know. And that just kind of sounds silly to say that, but whether it's me or the proper department head that needs to get involved with the issue. So we've heard things, people will talk about the trash or blight problems, or maybe a lights out on a street, or maybe somebody's got complaints about burning permits or something. But one thing that, doesn't work well is when we get some anonymous letters, and then we really need to be able to follow up with the resident about what's going on, who needs to get involved. So, we had gotten some letters about some stuff going on about burning, and, I didn't know how to best reach this resident because it's anonymous. So I'm hoping that they do see this video or this minutes, but yeah, please let us know. Please give us a call. We can keep things confidential. So just, if you have an issue, please contact me or contact the department that's in charge of that. So that might be public safety. And yeah, we're quite friendly. So please give us a call. Thank you. That's all I have, Tammy.
That was short and sweet. Thank you. Okay, that gets us to 11, adoption of minutes.
All right, Steve Jones will make a motion to approve the minutes as laid out in 11.1.
Brenda Flusale, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I am an aye. Thank you very much. That passes unanimously. Correspondence to council.
Okay, thank you. We received lots of emails. These are all of them as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. We had a resident in support of, I didn't write it down. Oh, in support of Weigold, to help protect the farmland, the greenway connectivity, and to preserve the 2 mills. We had a resident write in favor of virtual meetings. Some of the reasons given, we were enable more participation, virtual workspaces, and transparency and accountability. Another resident write in about virtual meetings. They also cited childcare, parental care, and care for loved ones, and also transparency. Another voted yes, or said yes for virtual meetings. They're only able to attend in meetings. They are working mom and they don't get off till late. So it also helps with accessibility. And by not allowing virtual meetings, they said it disenfranchises our residents. Another vote in support of virtual meetings, they have young kids and sports and evening activities get in the way. So being online, it helps them be accessible. Another accessibility for virtual meetings because of health reasons. Another wants to keep virtual meetings because they're able to listen and learn more. With their work schedule, they've never been able to participate before. And they wanted to recognize that there's a lot of people who, including themselves, who suffer from anxiety, and going into a crowded room may not be comfortable or achievable for them. Another person wanted to do virtual meetings because it's difficult. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. They want in-person meetings. There's difficulty with packets and discussions and connectivity, and they felt it was time to get back to being in person. Another one in support of virtual meetings. They have a strong support. They found that it's a valuable, engaging tool. They can't imagine denying residents with illnesses, disabilities, compromised immune systems, et cetera, and they found it beneficial to have the closed caption. We received another email from a resident in favor of the Weigold property. They want to keep it untouched. Another resident wrote in about support for the Weigold property. They wanted to endorse the property acquisition because they wanted to keep that large habitat area connectivity going. Another person wrote in favor of the Weigolds because they felt it was an asset to the town and they want to leave it unchanged. We received an email from a resident about EV vehicles. It was a link to an article for us to read. Another resident wrote in favor of virtual meetings because of the record number of attendance. And the last one I had was another resident writing in about virtual meetings. They are in favor. It offers people the opportunity, every opportunity to participate, gives greater access, and people who have cut the cord, who don't have cable, don't have access to the cable channel that has our meetings on them. So this was very beneficial for them. So that was all the correspondence I had, again, as of 4.
Thank you very much. That gets us to number 13, Chairperson's report. So I just wanted to report that coming up on an agenda, I received an email from the Board of Ed chairwoman regarding the COVID fund request. So we're going to get that on an agenda coming up. One of the things I wanted to bring up is I was successful in this legislative session with securing $1 million bond for the fire stations. So I am going to be on hopefully the August bonding agenda meeting to get it allocated to the town, and we will be able to reduce the amount that we have to bond for the fire stations by $1 million. So the state will be helping us out with the fire station project. So we'll be making an announcement once it's all finalized, but it's part of the package that's already been signed by the governor. So it's just a matter of getting on the bonding agenda now. So I was very happy about that. I will be having chair hour on July 3rd. 6:30, regularly scheduled time. And I believe we had to do a new Zoom mic because the last one got goofed up. So I think Megan may have sent it to me, but if we can get that information out, I would appreciate that. Okay. And then I just wanted to say congratulations to our recent 2021 high school grads. I saw pictures for the ceremony, and that I think it's pretty cool to actually have a graduation ceremony in the yard goats place. So I just wanted to say congrats to our grads. That's all that I have for now. So that gets us to communications and petitions from council persons. If you have something you would like to add or request, please raise your hand. I'm getting my notes ready now. Brenda.
Thank you. I missed the unmute again. First thing, the planning and zoning has been discussing a lot about finding more affordable housing. As you know, Tolland is way below what the state wants us to be for a percentage of affordable housing. And in their past few meetings, they've had discussions on what they're allowed to do to help get some more affordable housing, but that there's also things that the town council could do to possibly attract more affordable housing. So I think we need to have a discussion, maybe even it's a joint discussion, about ways that the planning and zoning and the town council can work together to try getting our percentage of affordable housing up to some acceptable levels. Because like some things, policies are what we do, regulations are what they do. So maybe if we come together and create a plan, an integrated plan about what we where we're comfortable, either offering incentives or creating policy to get more affordable housing. I think it's worthwhile. And then for the Board of Ed, I just wanted to say a huge congratulations to, again, our graduates, but also the girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, the golf team, the girls and boys track, and the Tolland Middle School Invention Convention. These kids, through the pandemic and with their families and coaches, have persevered and really they've gotten a lot of awards, won some state championships, etc. So, congratulations to them, to this Board of Ed staff and to their coaches for getting them that far, and the teachers, because one of these is the Invention Convention. That's all teacher driven. So that's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 3 quick requests. Hopefully, I was just referring back to the May 26 minutes that Mr. Ferrigno from Eversource was going to provide some information about gas line expansion plans, and I think they were going to look into some of the costs and partnerships that might be possible. And I wasn't sure if that was communicated to the manager, because I know I think I had requested that information. So just to get a copy of that if they've done so, or just touch base with them if they haven't yet. Second was great news about the bond council for the $1 million. Just in line with that, has there been a formal building committee established for or is that necessary for the firehouse projects? And just as a sort of a shotgun request, if there is a need for a town council liaison, I would be interested in possibly serving on that as a liaison to the council for the building committee process. And then the third item, which might be a long-term or a later term request, would be perhaps a joint meeting between the council, conservation, and maybe the Historical Society once all the work is finalized on the Weigold acquisition and designation of who is taking kind of ownership or responsibility to. I think Councilor Johnson is new, and I had not done a site walk until this past weekend. So just to get everybody on board with, what's being considered, and just having those discussions, knowing that, the Conservation Commission has a pretty thorough site plan and management plan process, but just there seems like there's a lot of moving parts there. It might be good to have everybody there for an in-person site walk, just to get an understanding of the lay of the land and what may or may not be considered or need to be done to make the space safe and accessible.
Perfect. I got that. Mike, do you have the notes on that also?
So for the answers to the questions that Steve just said, so I know that there was no building committee was done for the highway garage on the town side. So I think that's more of an internal thing, but I would look into that. And then also about Eversource, I know there was a follow-up that the gas representative was working with, I want to say, planning departments on getting some maps of our business districts in town to see where they are, and to see where the gas line could potentially be expanded to and how much that would cost. So I don't think that's completed yet. Okay. So, and then the third thing was more about a joint meeting. So that's something that, would be fine for us to talk about.
Afterwards, yeah. Okay. Sophia.
Thank you so much, Steve. I would love to be able to take a walk and see this site. I was thinking about that while everyone was discussing. I was like, I want to see it. So thank you for bringing that up. And in addition to with Eversource, as a huge advocate for affordable housing, it was very enlightening to hear their positioning with regard to this gas line. I found it, specifically interesting when I mentioned to them that the possibility of allowing residents to tap in. My perception was that from what he said, they would have to look toward the feasibility for that, based on how many residents that they would have and how the cost analysis would be for them as Eversource. And I learned that you can't just drop affordable housing where you don't have infrastructure. You have to have, I come from a place where there's sewers and everything is public. So with recognizing how, affordable housing and its planning could, essentially cause a burst to our school district, cause a burst to, up to our infrastructure. There's not enough public transportation out here to, provide people access to get back and forth to work, whether or not there's enough jobs available here or nearby. It was a lesson learned. It was a lesson learned because I was one person that, would always say affordable housing. But we have a lot of houses on the market, and maybe, I don't know if the state would look toward working with how to, get lower interest rates or, lower mortgage rates and get people into actual homes instead of affordable housing. I'm not a big person for complexes or, more projects. Like, New York was a concrete jungle with projects, and building those structures was horrible when it came to the COVID-19 pandemic. So in consideration of that, thinking that, building a townhouse structure or a big building and empowering a whole bunch of people in there, and whether or not there's health disparities that affect them because, they're the type that needs affordable housing, whether or not their income would allow it. It was enlightening, like I said, again, to hear Eversource say we're going to put a gas line down, but whether or not we want to extend that outside of the business district, it kind of, again, I learned that, you just can't drop a building here if you don't have the public sewer and access to water and, gas or some kind of heating. So it was great. Like I said, again, coming from a city and coming into the country, I have to accept that this is the country. I thought the Midwest was the only country and the South was the country, but no. It was a great learning lesson listening to Eversource, and interested again for us to have that conversation with the planning and zoning, just to see if what could we do with what we have in order to meet that benchmark. But it seems extremely difficult with the way that it's being framed with how it works for Tolland, because we might be at what the most that we can do. So exploring ideas of how we could do more would definitely take a lot more time, and I would be interested to see how that would develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that gets us to 15, public participation. Same as earlier, if you are on a device, you can raise your hand. When I call on you, please state your name and address for the record. You have a 3-minute limit for anything that is under the jurisdiction of the town council. If you are on a phone, do not have access to a device, please hit *9. That will raise your hand function, and I will call on you. Same applies, name and address, 3-minute limit. Kate Howard Bender.
Thank you, everybody. Kate Howard Bender, 103 Goose Lane. Thanks for a reasonable meeting tonight, everybody. Question to the town manager. Because this change to town meetings is so recent, I'm just wondering if either of the state reps or the state senator had given you a heads up regarding this implementer bill's pending impact on public meetings. I'm guessing you knew that. That's why you did this stuff tonight. So thank you for that. I'm disappointed that the proclamation request will not be in the hands of the whole council, regardless of whether the agenda is within the purview of the town council appointed town council chair. Thank you for doing the legal FOIA legwork on that, Mr. Rosen. Regarding equipment and remote access, I'm sure that the town staff plans to do a survey regarding what equipment is already in-house before you go about encumbering, ordering, or buying more. It's important that we continue to be frugal. Your educational professionals have been doing this remote hybrid business for over a year, and I'm sure that they would be happy to supply technical assistance. I'm sure an agreement could also be made to borrow some equipment in the interim as well. Maybe the TC could contact the Board of Ed to ask the civics class at the high school to assist as an additional tech host as well for class credit. That might be a cool opportunity. A comment, encumbering but not planning to pay is a morally murky area, and I don't think that that's the right thing to do. A question, could you please work with the Board of Ed regarding the upgrades to the turf fields? And I will also thank you very much, all of you, for listening to the residents regarding continuing the remote option. This is good for democracy, and it shows the citizens that their input is worth it. Thank you all. Be well.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. All right, then Steve, motion to adjourn.
Yep. Steve Jones make a motion to adjourn at 10:22 p.m.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye. Aye.
I am an aye. That is unanimous. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Take care. Have a good night.